6 months has been difficult for everybody, and it's been difficult around City Hall here because we were closed for quite a while, and to have meetings and to have gatherings, and so we followed all of the health regulations. And this was a special occasion, the city's 25th birthday, and this was supposed to have been on April 1st. But as we know, as we just mentioned, it was impossible to do that. But Her Worship, the late Frances O. Perry, she's keeping an eye on us tonight in her photo there behind us. Back about, well, 25 years ago, I guess it was, and we wanted to have a Good Neighbor Award, so I talked to the Perry family at the time, and they were very pleased that we'd name it in honor of Frances O. Perry. She was the first and only woman mayor in Summerside, and longtime business person, and a very successful business person. She was also on council too before she became mayor, and she passed away in office in 1981. And that's what the special ceremony is tonight, to present the Good Neighbor Award, and it's going to be presented to Catherine Dorr. Catherine, we welcome you here tonight. So welcome to all our city councillors. Councillor Campbell is unable to be with us. We have all other councillors, and I believe everybody knows all other councillors. And we have members of the public, welcome, and we have George, I see, from the Historical Society and others. And Kay Kelly is with us. She agreed to serve on the committee, but until COVID happened, it kind of got thrown off a bit, but welcome, Kay Kelly. Kay is a Summerside resident, a retired registered nurse, and she has a great interest in her city. And we have our CAO, Rob Philpott, with us, and our police chief. Now, he's here because there's a meeting a little later in the police committee, not because we're expecting any trouble or anything, but it's always great to have our chief here. And our former CEO, Bob Ashley, is with us tonight. Welcome, Bob. Yeah. And Brian Herlick, mentioned, is running the controls here for the mics and the sound system. And so welcome everybody, and and members of the media. There may be some members of the media watching on YouTube, and members of the public, welcome. So we'll continue on with our ceremony. And again, I had mentioned welcome to Catherine Dorr and the guests. The special guest is Catherine Dorr tonight, and Catherine has made a tremendous contribution to Summerside over many years. She is a registered nurse and worked in our hospital and the health system for many years, and a great historian. And we all saw the book that she wrote along with Wainwright, and it's a big book and fairly thick, and a lot of great history on Summerside and on the Prince County Hospital and the health system. So thank you, Catherine, for that. And there is a citation to be read, and I believe Angie Perry, who's Mayor Perry's granddaughter-in-law, she wants to come forward and maybe read the citation and have some comments. Okay. I think that microphone is on, isn't it, Brian? It is.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Omar, too, our photographer tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angela Perry, granddaughter-in-law to the late Mayor Frances O. Perry. Born in Summerside, one of 8 children, her father, town's first foreman, Frances Perry strongly held the belief that women should take a much more prominent role in providing leadership and becoming actively involved in business and community affairs, as well as a role in the political process at all levels of government. Frances was a woman of many firsts. She was the first woman to become mayor of the town of Summerside, and prior to that, she was the first female councillor. Frances was a businesswoman, having owned and operated Capitol Theatre Limited, a family-owned company started by her father in 1911, assisted by her husband Wilford after the passing of her brother Harold Goody. Frances spoke publicly many times of the moral support she received in her role as chief magistrate and business person from her husband Wilford and members of her family. Frances had been a major shareholder in both the Capitol and former Regent theaters, and she was the sole owner of Perry Heights subdivision in Wilmot. Among her many accomplishments, Frances was named the Advisory Council of the Status of Women. She has been both Summerside and provincial president of the Business and Professional Women's Association. Frances served 10 years on the Chamber of Commerce as director. She served on the Centennial Committee. She was president of the Catholic Women's League for 4 years, Girl Guide leader for 12 years. She was a member of the Downtown Business Association since it was formed, and Frances served 2 years as president of the Maritime Motion Picture Association. In 1977 and 1978, Frances was named by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau to serve on the selection committee to choose the recipient of the Outstanding Achievement Award of Public Service of Canada. The purpose of that award was to enable the Government of Canada to honor career employees of the public service for outstanding accomplishment and distinguished service for national and international service. The Mayor's Good Neighbor Award of the Year, in memory of Frances Perry, is awarded to individuals, organizations, businesses, or communities based outside of the City of Summerside who have been a good neighbor to our community and who have contributed significantly to the overall good of the City of Summerside. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great privilege that I present the award to this year's recipient, Catherine Dewar.
Thank you, Angie. This time I call upon Kay Kelly to assist in the presentation. Kay is a committee member. And then after the presentation, Catherine will have an opportunity to say a few words, and councillors and other members of the public. This is the... Maybe you should read it in the minutes if you want. Sure, read it in the minutes.
Myself or
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sure. The Mayor's Good Neighbor Award, in memory of Frances O'Perry, presented to Catherine Dewar in recognition of being a good neighbor to Summerside.
There's the main trophy as well, too.
Mayor Basil, for the pictures, could maybe everybody
Yes.
move a little bit down
Yes,
so
right.
because the podium's in the way.
We're keeping our 6 feet as best we can.
Over here?
I don't know how you write it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Do people hear me here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, for some strange reason, I didn't realize I was making any comments, so I have nothing prepared. Anyhow, I remember this building from my childhood. It used to be the post office, and I can remember going with my mother, father, up the stairs. I think the same stairs are still here, right? And you had the box and a little key, and I thought that was great fun, opening the box and getting the mail out. And I remember too that you could mail a letter in the morning and it would be delivered by the afternoon. So things are not quite as good as they were about 100 years ago. Anyhow, and then as I got older, I was given the key and I could pick the mail up on the way home, and that was a big deal. So I'm so pleased that the City of Summerside has maintained and restored this building. It's really important to remember and maintain our built heritage and our cultural heritage. And the mayor mentioned the book that was written about the hospital. That was a big part of the cultural heritage of Summerside and surrounding areas when that was done. And I probably will plug my other books while I'm here too. That I did a book on the ladies of the Second World War, or First World War, and 7 or 8 came from the Summerside area. And then I did a book on Georgina Pope. She lived in Summerside, in the house they now call, is it the Hunt House? Is that how you refer to it? I think it should be the Pope House. Popes lived in it before the Hunts did, but that's just my opinion. And so again, that's part of the heritage of Summerside. I'm now working on a book on the women of the Second World War. So if any of you know anybody, let me know after. I'm still finding women, and I'm up to about 600 from PEI who were in the Second World War. And they were in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Nursing Corps, and of course the Red Cross. So again, there are quite a few from this area. You'll recognize the names. So that's, I'm sort of trying to do my bit here for the cultural heritage of Summerside. And as I look around here, it's really nice to see you're doing something with the Armory. I'm not 100% sure what, but it's nice that will be maintained and restored. And I also point out that on the wall of the Armory is a National Historic plaque in memory of Georgina Pope, who was a national historic figure. I don't know if you realize how important this woman was to Canadian military history, but she was the most significant woman in Canadian military history, and she lived in the Hunt House. Her father was W.H. Pope, Father of Confederation. She led the two nursing contingents to the two Boer Wars, and she was the first matron of the Canadian Army Corps. She served overseas in World War I, and again, as somebody I think you should be very proud of, and you should probably know more about, because she did live in this area. So, again, I guess I'm very pleased that you've awarded me this. And I remember Mrs. Perry. Again, when I wasn't very old, I seem to remember she didn't mention any politics, but I seem to remember they were sort of a political family, and so was my parents. I also remember in the 1950s that she and my mother were working at the unemployment insurance office, and sort of rare in those days that women were working outside of the home. And my mother continued to work, and so did Mrs. Perry. So Mrs. Perry was certainly a leader in, I'd say, women's rights in this area for her great contribution she made over many, many years. And I did go to college with her daughter, Kitty, who really wanted to be here tonight. Lives in Halifax now, but she has some medical problems and couldn't be here. So again, thank you very much for this award, and I hope you will continue to honor the heritage of Summerside and its buildings and its people, because there is a rich, very rich heritage here. Okay, I won't talk anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. And just before we move on to some other speakers, we did receive a letter this afternoon from Kitty Wiley in Halifax, the daughter of Her Worship, the late Frances O'Perry. Thank you to the Mayor and Council for the wonderful award in honor of her mother, Frances O'Perry. Also, a thank you to the selection committee for the decision. May the evening go well. I wish I could be there. Catherine is indeed a perfect candidate for the award, having been a nurse, nursing instructor, and a great historian documenting the valuable care given to soldiers during World War I. Be well, best regards from Kitty. That's the daughter. So thank you, Kitty Wiley, for that letter. And also there was another one came in today from, the last name is Stewart, Linda Stewart. I'm not sure who it is. I also received an email today from Linda Stewart asking to please pass on her congratulations to Catherine. She said, this is a wonderful, deserved honor for her. Linda Stewart, RN at Prince County Hospital. So she wanted that in the record. Also, just I'll mention this, another former councillor, this trophy, when we set this up 25 years ago, I went to see Ed Dillon. He had a trophy business, and he was a former councillor at the time, or former councillor. So this trophy was made by Ed Dillon. He might have served with Francis, I'm not sure, with the late mayor. But anyway, this will be on display in our trophy case. So I just wanted to mention that. And also, within the city, as you know, Kay and George, we named a street in honor of your dad out by the recreation centre, by the racetrack, I should say, because he spent many, many hours there as the manager. So there is a Bob Dorr Street in Summerside. So I just thought I would mention those. And so let's, the councillors will be a little later, but let's hear from remarks. Anybody else within the audience that would like to say a few words? The floor will be open. George, do you want to speak, or anybody else?
Well, congratulations, Catherine. Well deserved. And I think what's so special about this Mrs. Perry's award is the fact that it's about service. Service to your neighbors, service to your city, service to the island. Something I think is important, and I'll read just a little bit. When Catherine wrote her book, Those Splendid Girls, and the opening little paragraph says something very important. In Those Splendid Girls, author Catherine Dewar combines her love of history and knowledge of nursing to redress a 100-year-old wrong. And that wrong was that sacrifice of all those nurses was never ever mentioned. And the absence in the historical nomination of Prince Edward Island in Canada, this book identifies at least 115 island women that Catherine identifies for war sacrifice. By extending this book to the island, and Catherine gaining rare history from Ottawa and beyond, and her research was just one big journey. PEI was small enough that Catherine could do this and set the template. The rest of Canada is an envy. This type of book could not be written in our bigger provinces. Things would be written, but not to this extent. I'll speak on something else that's very important. If you want to know about PTSD, read Catherine's book. There's no book that really details the hardship and the fact that these were all women. Many of them suffered for the rest of their lives through their experiences. The book shows the reality of war and how it affects all who serve. Catherine's passion for this is every day. She just told me she found, while walking through some cemeteries on the island, she found 3 more veteran ladies that have not been identified. And I give her full marks for this. She was also a help to me personally because my older sister Andrea was in the Second World War with the medical branch, number 7 General Hospital. So she filled in some blanks for me that I didn't know about my sister. So this great gift of awareness through her efforts will last. Her work will be legendary and very worthwhile. A month ago, I got a call from the Salvation Army. And what's really neat about the Salvation Army, we know they do great work, but they are also people who look for military history. I got a call, there was a box of stuff that I should see. And I got the box and I opened it up. And there were some albums of nursing sisters from all over Canada. And so when I presented that to Catherine, She kind of thought she died and went to heaven that day. But it was very important, and she is following that up. But what's sad about that, it was a box full of history and honor that these nurses did. But there was also pictures from family albums. So it's pretty sad, but I want to say it happens all the time. The families often do not take the effort to look after their family history. But again, that's the message that we have to kind of give out there. And I want to say, yes, the subject of museum has been buzzing around here. But I'll give you some realism. I'd like to talk on real terms of how much of that history, like what Catherine reviewed, is sitting up in attics and basements. It's simply amazing. But sadly, some of it goes to eBay. Some of it is sold at yard sales. And recently, I got a call, which I was anticipating, was from the daughter of Lowell Eustace. The family has gone through his personal effects. They have a right to choose what they wish to keep, and they did. But the remainder is a treasure trove of Lowell's work all his life. His artwork, his history work. We have that Air Force Park out there because of Lowell Eustace. He actually painted a painting in 1980. The park wasn't built till much later. He had a vision, and we carried that out for him. So fortunately, again, we're working on getting some space to house Lowell's collection until we can get it sorted out and work on the museum and get some of that stuff artifact, the Wyatt Not History Center, etc. So it's a challenge I'm talking about there. And Catherine is a person who inspires you to do these things. Because, as I said, I can't thank her enough from a veteran what it means to do this great work. So thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, George. Thank you very much, Mr. Dalton. And you had mentioned the museum. There's no question. I think everybody in this room agrees with you. And as a matter of fact, it was talked about again today about how we can tie a project together to include a museum. Because you had mentioned the military history, we have the fox industry, we have so many things, and the fire department's got great information over there from the 1800s to you name it. All kinds of things that could be in a museum. So we're working very hard to try to get it. It takes a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of time, and so you don't have to convince anybody in here other than we've got to get a way figured out how to make it happen. And I think this council will do that. So anyway, thank you for your presentation, and we'll continue on with the program here. Any members of council like to say a few words? Maybe we'll start with our deputy mayor. I believe she was a friend of the Perry family.
Actually, to this day, I live across the street from where Mayor Francis lived, and Angie is in that house, Angie and Justin, so it's really nice to see. I think as elected officials, sometimes people think that many of the things that we do is attend meetings and work on policy and different parts of that part of operation for the community and the city. But one of the things that we do take very seriously is the love of Summerside, its heritage, and the legacy that our forefathers from, as you look around this room, when we're in this room, we do take it seriously because they were very good stewards of this treasure that we call home and Summerside. And I think one of the things for us that's really important as a community is that we never forget, that we take the time to really celebrate and embrace all of the legacy and the treasures that have been left in our care by our forefathers and all of the organizations and community leaders of years gone by to really give us the kind of community that we have. So we're very thankful for that, and celebrating an evening such as this evening to recognize you, Catherine, for the work and your community leadership and your books and the many things. And I look in the audience and I see many people that have given to the community in many aspects of community life, and it's so very, very important. I think one of the things about former Mayor Frances Perry is that she was one of those people, from what I remember as a young girl, and as Angie had said, she was certainly my Girl Guide leader. And she had such an influence on many residents and people in the community. But for young people and for young women, she certainly was somebody that we could look up to and see that there might be a chance that we could do something like her. So she really opened the door and caused an awful lot of things to happen, being the first mayor, being a first businesswoman, being a woman that served on the status of women. Like, she did an awful lot of things, and I think sometimes what's really important is we need to remember that, because today we wouldn't have the assets and the treasures, and we would not maybe see a lot of women involved in business or leadership roles if it wasn't for somebody in a role model like former Mayor Frances Perry. So one of the things, my mother was a person that kept scrapbooks, and I was going through some of her things, and I just happened to find this, and she kept that of Mayor Frances Perry when she had passed away. So my goal, after speaking with Mayor Basil, is we're going to have that scanned and send that to Kitty, because I understand that she is doing some work on information and whatever things that she's looking for in Mayor Frances. So I think it's really something, but that really encouraged me that my mom really thought so much of her, and I was the one that is the caretaker of a lot of her journals and things like that. So we'll make sure that Kitty gets it. So congratulations, Catherine, and thank you for adding to our legacy and our heritage of Summerside.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McCollum. Any other members of council want to say a few words? Okay, Councillor McKeever, you'll go that way.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just briefly, certainly want to offer congratulations to Catherine, and I have had the pleasure of reading some of your work. I won't say I read all your work, but I certainly read some of it. I enjoy history very much, and just wanted to say thank you for bringing alive these personal stories of these tremendous women. And thank you for your passion for what you're doing, and I hope you continue it for many years to come. And I did have the pleasure of knowing Frances Perry from a couple of perspectives. When I first moved to Summerside, I come from a military family, so I came to Summerside when I was in grade 12, although my mother was from Summerside, so we were here often when I was a kid. One of the first people that I became friends with was Emery Perry, so I spent many hours at the Perry house in those years, and hanging around, and then we'd head out late at night, and most good things don't happen after midnight, so I won't get into that, but
That's why you got home early, was it?
anyways, then later on, years later, I became recreation director for the old town of Summerside, and I think I was still employed with, if my memory holds me correct, with the town when Mrs. Perry, when Mayor Perry passed away, and so I became an employee of the town, and I don't think, well, I suppose you were probably there then, Chief, I think, as a young constable, and I think you were probably there, Your Worship, as well as an employee at that time. So certainly knew Mrs. Perry from a couple of perspectives, and she's just absolutely tremendous lady. So again, congratulations, Catherine, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Brian. For Councillor McFeely. Yes, I was in the honor guard at the funeral home for that day. I always remember that. We'll continue on. Councillor Adams?
Congratulations, Catherine. There's really not much more I can say. A lot of good messages have been passed on already. I do represent Ward 8, Wilmot, which houses Perry subdivision, so I think it was actually your worship who you told me all about that one day whenever I had no idea. So that was interesting. And I just wanted to, as chair of culture, just wanted to convey our appreciation for people like yourselves that make sure that the past is not lost as we move on. And I know George does his best to keep us in line with everything we should know, and that's very much appreciated. And I thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Duran, your grandfather, I guess, was probably the lieutenant governor when she was mayor. Would be around there, wouldn't it, Dr. Duran?
Probably.
1980
Yes.
until 84 or 5.
Yes, well,
I
she
guess,
was in office then, yes.
Yeah. The house that I live in was built in 1974, so I don't think it's a heritage home, but I'd be happy to name it the Pope House, just so we can say we have a Pope House in Summerside.
Yeah.
Since coming onto council, or before coming onto council, I guess you don't really realize the company that you're in, the folks that live in the city, and what they've done and what they've contributed. And I've found since coming onto council, folks like yourself that we have awards for, and we speak to and speak about. You realize that there's really a lot of people in the city that have made some contributions, and they're still here. And so I guess just with that, I'd like to congratulate you on what you've accomplished and contributed to the city, and I hope you're not finished doing so. So congratulations, and thanks for coming to
Thank you, Councillor
here tonight.
Duran. We'll continue on this side. Councillor McDougall, got your light on, so you're ready to go.
Thank you, Your Worship. I knew Miss Frances Perry, Mayor Perry. When I started the working world, I started at Smallman's in Summerside. I worked there for a few years, and I was on the Downtown Business Association with Mrs. Perry, and in fact, she was the president of the association before she got elected, and I took over from her. And she was a great lady. You could tell by her leadership skills at that time. So it's very fitting that another very deserving lady gets this award. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you, Catherine, and congratulate you for this award. Thank you for the tremendous contribution you've made to our city. We're very proud of this little city, and it's people like you that keep the history alive, and we thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Ramsey?
Yes, good evening, everyone. And I did not know Mrs. Perry, but I certainly spent lots of time at the theater. And my daughter Chelsea ended up working there just before it closed. So again, had lots of opportunity to go there as an adult. Congratulations, Catherine, on receiving the Good Neighbor Award. I need to let you know that I do have a number of your books at home, and I enjoy going through them and just looking back on the history of Summerside. It's very nice to do. So anyway, congratulations to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. And I had mentioned earlier that Councillor Campbell is unable to be with us, but Councillor Snow, you
thank you, Your
have the floor,
Worship.
sir.
Ms. Dewar, I wanted to start by congratulating you. When you spoke of maintaining and honoring our built heritage and cultural heritage, and without individuals like yourself and others significantly contribute to our community in that area, I can easily see how that would be lost in a hurry, which is unfortunate. So I think a very sincere thanks need to be put to yourself and others within our community that put the effort and time into making sure that some younger councillors like myself and other councillors realize the significance of that, because it is very important. And I didn't have the chance to know Miss Perry. She had passed in '81, and I was born in 1980, so obviously I didn't get the chance to meet her, which sounds like she was a great contributor to our community as well. So, like Councillor McDougall said, it's very fitting that you received this award, so congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. And anybody else within the audience want to say a couple of words? Go ahead. We don't want to cut anybody off here.
Never pass up talking. Mayor Stewart, Deputy Mayor McCollum, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, Catherine and family. My name is Joyce Phillips, and along with my husband Gordon, we lived in Summerside until we moved out in 2001, and we had a business here. So we're quite familiar with Summerside and its heritage and its importance to what its role. Catherine and I go way back. We go back to Prince County Hospital when she was a nursing student. And neither one of us look our age, so it's kind of hard to tell. But it's amazing when you see somebody with Catherine's caliber education and her devotion to what she deems as important. And us that are involved in the history and our passion, we pull a thread. That thread leads to a ball of yarn, and that yarn ends up becoming a blanket or a wrap. And it's unbelievable, the history over the time that I and Gordon have been involved in the Lest We Forget Committee, that what we found in our residents and in the city. For instance, did you know that Prince Edward Island had the 3rd highest per capita of men who volunteered for the Second World War? Prince County, of 3 counties, had the highest per capita. West Prince had the highest per capita. Our First Nations people at the time had 69 members from Lennox Island. They only had 109 men on the reserve. 69 went. When they come back, they weren't known as Canadian citizens, although they laid down their lives and volunteered. Did you know that over 600 Islanders served in the Civil War? One man walked from O'Leary to serve for the North. Now, not all of them served the North. Some went for the South, some went to the North. A lot of them were women across Canada, served in the Civil War. Some of them were actually spies, history. So when you hear Catherine saying, which she had mentioned to me probably a year ago, oh, I think I'm going to look to see, how many women on Prince Edward Island were involved in the Second World War. And I thought, okay, we're scratching our head just doing what we've done through our efforts and everything. I thought, 100, 125. She's up to 800. Stories, so many stories. So when you see people like us who go to small communities, and the first thing we do is not going to a gift shop or whatever, we're walking the cemeteries. Because if you want to find out about a community, you walk the cemeteries, and that tells you everything, everything. So Catherine, congratulations. Keep up the work. I've got 10 or 12 books already sold for your next edition. And it's a privilege to know you for all these years, and appreciate your work.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we've gone around the table and everybody had an opportunity to speak, and again we say congratulations. So I think if it's okay, I know we're live on YouTube, but we'll have to move the podium here. And do we want to take a couple of minutes here, adjournment, in case you want some photos with the group? And let's adjourn for 5 minutes. Mr. Herlick, do we shut things off or just leave it on? So your video is still rolling, so the sound system is still on, so you know what I mean by that.
And if anybody is having pictures taken, there is a box of masks, and we do ask people for safe distancing for the photo, so that we're not basically side by side, a bit of a distance as requested. Okay.
And here's the main trophy to the photographer. This is the Catherine. And even when we started back up the meeting, I think that was about the same one.
Here he comes. Here comes Mr. Pope. Mr. Pope.
Hello, folks. We're going to be starting the other portion of our meeting in just a moment, so we just want to let council members know.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. In a minute or so, we'll get going here again after our very special ceremony for the Mayor's Good Neighbor Award. I understand we're still live on YouTube, and we'll start our committee meetings on this date, October 6th, 2020. And yeah, I had mentioned that they're certainly welcome to stay if they want. Yeah. Oh, okay. Members of the public in the hallway, they're welcome to come in. So for the record, October the 6th, 2020, committee meetings for the City of Summerside. And since the meeting started, we now have another director with us, Director Mike Tasuska from Economic Development. And do I miss one? We're starting, the planning board meeting will be first. Mr. Philpott, you had a question?
Your Worship, I was wondering if I could burden council with the addition of a couple of items for Committee of the Whole.
Okay.
And two of them involve facility-related updates. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Oh, Your Worship, sorry. For community service, the Meadow Height Park gazebo replacement, it can be removed from the agenda. We've had some discussions, and I think we've come to a understanding or a fix moving forward.
So is that on recreation or
that's under community
services?
Service Committee? Yes.
Okay. Just remind me when we get to it there, just to, in case. Okay. We're just waiting for our deputy mayor. She'll be with us in a second. Welcome to the members of the public. Journal Pioneer? Or the Guardian? The Journal? You sure? Yeah. Okay, we're back on the go here. So the Planning Board, I believe, is the first item on the agenda. Deputy Mayor or Councillor McFeely. So we may as well continue on. You have two items.
I do, Your Worship. I thank you, and we call to order the excuse me, the Planning Board meeting of October 6th, and the agenda has been circulated, so we'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Ramsey, that the agenda for the October 6th Planning Board meeting be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Well, the first item on the agenda, Your Worship, is the recommendation for a zoning amendment at 565 Water Street, Hippenstalls Corner. The supporting explanation, the purpose of the zoning amendment is to allow an apartment building development. The applicant is proposing apartment buildings with underground parking. Apartment building means a building containing more than 2 dwelling units except a row house and townhouse as defined in this bylaw. Background: an application was initiated by the City of Summerside, Mike Tutuska, for a portion of PID number 68742 to amend the city zoning bylaw from medium density residential R3 zone to high density residential R4 zone. A public meeting was held on September 23rd, 2020, and council gave first reading on the same date. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw: when planning board reviews a zoning bylaw amendment, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Under section 8.4 of the Parks and Green Space Plan, the criteria of B, C, E, G, and H must be considered. A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment: if council approves the zoning map amendment from R3 to R4, the zoning will be R4 unless it is rezoned back to R3. The applicant will be permitted to construct an apartment building or buildings subject to the R4 development standards as noted below. The maximum building height allowed in the R4 zone is 14 meters or 45.9 feet, typical of 4-story building. A proposed building height exceeding 14 meters, 45.9 feet, would require a building height variance, which would be a separate process, requiring written notification to neighbors and council approval. So the R4 zone is requirements are laid out there, Your Worship, in the chart. I don't think it's necessary to read those into the record. They're there for, it's been circulated to council. I think we're okay to move forward there, Your Worship. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment: the rezoning conforms to the official plan, section 5.2.2, location of high density housing, and section 5.8.2, parklands. 5.2.2, location of high density housing. Council's intentions about locating high density housing are important to residents concerned with potential location of row houses and apartment buildings into their predominantly low density neighborhood. To help allay these concerns, council lays out specific policies below on where they may allow future high density housing, some which elaborate on their foregoing policy for special planning and development areas. Location criteria. Council's criteria for locating high density housing in the city of Summerside include the desirability of infilling properties which are already partly developed for higher density housing, the desirability of locating high density housing close to jobs, community facilities and services, and of promoting pedestrian access, opportunities for maximizing the number of opportunities for scenic views through higher density and taller residential buildings, but with protection of adequate view planes, benefits of locating high density housing in difficult to service areas so that they can help distribute expensive development costs among more users, opportunities for innovative mixes of higher density housing with other residential developments in CDAs, and that's a comprehensive development area, opportunities for recycling older non-heritage residential property with higher density development, opportunity for apartments in residential and commercial use buildings, avoidance of negative economic impact on surrounding land uses, whether existing or proposed. The objective within the official plan is to encourage high density housing in specific areas, And our policies relating to that, following policy statements. Number 1, to promote high-density housing on properties already partly developed for high-density housing. 2, consider applications for high-density housing in the following situations. 3, a mix of housing types in comprehensive development areas. 4, areas presently occupied by conforming mobile home parks. Council has a separate policy related to that. That's 5.3.2.5. 5, rezoning in areas presently designated for medium density R3 residential use. 6, areas immediately north of downtown defined as Notre Dame Street to the north, Granville Street to the east, Heather Moyes Drive to the south, and Duke Street to the west, subject to no harmful impacts on local heritage housing. And D, within residential and commercial buildings. 7, downtown D zone, the urban core area, all districts. 8, city arteria and collector roads as referenced in section 7.1 and figure 7-1. 9, consider applications for high-density housing in other areas with careful consideration of council's location criteria listed above. 7.11, city arterials, Water Street East, South Drive, Water Street, and Heather Moyes Drive. 5.8.2, parklands. There are many other smaller parks near downtown in the residential neighborhoods, and there's also a green belt along the all-weather highway in West St. Elners. Connection can also be made between the Waterfront Trail and Confederation Trail, and then onto other trails throughout the city, with links to some parks and school sites. Also, the city is investigating the possibility of implementing flood greenways along watercourses and drainage areas for dual purpose of containing high seasonal runoffs and contributing to linear park systems. Components of such a linear park system would also be provided through higher parts of conservation areas. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment. This 4.14 acre site is suitable for high density residential land use. Existing public street network and municipal services are available for this development. A portion of the 4.14 acre is zoned conservation, running parallel to the existing water course, the stream. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the subject property abuts on a number of uses. The land use to the immediate east is R3, along with a C2 and C3 property. The north boundary abuts M1, light industrial. The south boundary abuts parkland, and the west boundary of the property abuts conservation zone, the stream, with R4 on the other side of the conservation zone. There's a non-conformance salvage yard, Highland Enterprise Limited, within the R4 zone. There are 2 other R4 zone developments within close proximity. The rezoning from R3 to R4 would be a zoning transition in height and density, with Greenwood Drive acting as a buffer between the 2 zones. The maximum building height in the R3 zone is 10.5 meters, which is 34.4 feet, typically a 3-story building. The maximum building height allowed in the R4 zone is 14 meters, 45.9 feet, typically a 4-story building. The density increases from 2 units in the R3 zone to multiple units in the R4 zone. And the maps attached to your worship showing the subject property as R3. Future land use plan, Schedule B from the official plan, supports the proposed residential use. And if you have you can see the different shades and different colors that define the various land uses there, your worship. E, any comments from residents and other interested persons? Staff comment. A public meeting was held on September 23rd, 2020. The public meeting notice was advertised in the September 4th edition of The Guardian. 16 letters were mailed to 24 property owners. Mike Tuska provided a explanation and slideshow of the development. Highland Enterprises, 578 Notre Dame Street, Robert Arsenault, sent written comments on the previous application in May 2020 on the subject. Mr. Arsenault would like his letter of May 20th to be considered again for this application. Kim Gallant-Sheheb, 23 Greenwood Drive, submitted written comments and spoke at the public meeting. Bonnie Rogerson and Tracy Brown represented Quebec Bay Environmental Management Association, owners of the Ice Pond property, spoke at the public meeting, and Barry Ford, 539 Sheen Street, spoke at the public meeting. Allison Hart provided written comments via an email to Councillor Ramsey. The written comments and those comments made by those that attending the public meeting are addressed in this report. The written comments, emails are attached on pages 9, 10, and 11 of this report. There's a map here, Your Worship, showing the buffer zone, the buffer notification zone, as well as the property owners who had sent in comments or had made comments at the meeting in their residence. F, the adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, storm water, and electrical services, city parking, and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment. The city water supply and sewer treatment systems can handle the additional loading created by the change in zoning. Rezoning this development from R3 to R4 increases the load on the lift station by less than 1% of the calculated future loading of the entire drainage basin. The city does not see this as a significant load change, therefore there is no expectation of the developer contributing to an upgrading of a new lift station. Notre Dame Street has a 300 millimeter distribution main on the north side of the development that can handle the water requirements of this change in zoning. The city's sewer main infrastructure for this development is a gravity main to the east of the property that can handle the change in zoning. Connection of this development into this system is to be at a manhole, or a manhole will have to be installed as part of the development. The proposed building height exceeding 14 meters, 45.9, would require a building height variance, which would be a separate process. Required written notification to neighbors and council approval. A proposed street closure would require a separate process, as per street closure under MGA. Stormwater would be collected on the subject property and connected to the city's storm drainage system. The site will provide on-site parking for the development as per the parking requirements in Section 10 of the zoning bylaw. Electrical servicing can be provided. Parkland dedication is not required as there is no subdivision of lands. There is ample parkland, 6 acres across the street on the waterfront under Section 8.4 of the Parks and Green Street Plan. The policies of the plan must be considered when reviewing the development application under the city zoning bylaw. The city's park and green space plan, section 6.5.3, outlines the city's intent for greenways, trails, and boardwalks. And section 7.33, new greenways, trails, and boardwalks, identifies the proposed greenway, 750 Ice Pond Greenway. The city will retain an easement along the stream to connect the ice pond to Green Shore. 6.5.3 Greenways, Trails and Boardwalks. Summerside's linear network of greenways, trails, and boardwalks will be expanded to integrate together as many other green areas, recreation facilities, and tourist attractions as possible. Where trails cannot be provided through the built-up area, connections will be made via sidewalks. There are exciting potentials for routing new greenways around conservation areas, together with trails and public viewing areas. In the case of a privately owned conservation area, agreements for such greenways will have to be reached with owners. It is noted that donations of land or access easements may be eligible for income tax incentives under the federal ecological gift program. If the land is ecologically significant and is protected from development in the future. Where appropriate, drainage greenways will be built, which council's policies are to expand Summerside's linear network of greenways, trails, and boardwalks to integrate together as many park, recreation facilities, and tourist attractions as possible. Section 7.3.3, new greenways, trails, and boardwalks. 750 Ice Pond Gateway. This proposed gateway would run through the Ice Pond Conservation Area, and its proposed extension, CA10, and would be interconnect the Confederation Trail with the Green Shore Park, and we can see that on that map, Your Worship, where 810 is there. So areas of conservation lands in the area, Your Worship, in the 2 square kilometers around the proposed site. We can see that there's 110 acres of conservation green space within 2 square kilometers of the area, as depicted on the map, Your Worship. G, the impacts from the development on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff's comment: the proposed change in zoning from R3 to R4 will have minimal impact on the amount of traffic in the area. 2 of the streets surrounding this property, South Drive and Water Street, are rated as collector streets and are designed and intended to handle large volumes of traffic from multiple local streets, one of which is Greenwood Drive. The expected changes in volume due to the change in zoning from R3 to R4 would create an additional 400 vehicles per day, which increases the volume by 0.08% of the total maximum volume of 5,000 vehicles per day for a local street. Assuming a 25% increase in traffic over the next 8 to 10 years, Greenwood Drive would still be at a 50% capacity. The proposed R4 development would also reduce the amount of street accesses to 2 locations rather than possible 25 access points in an R3 duplex type development, which reduces the number of conflict points along the street. Accesses will be reviewed at time of the development. There is an existing sidewalk along the east side of Greenwood Drive with a crosswalk at the intersection of Greenwood Drive and Water Street, which connects with the boardwalk along the waterfront. There is a future pedestrian trail intended to connect the Ice Pond Conservation Area and the Bidak Bay Boardwalk via the Ice Pond Greenway. See the map in F, I think, shows where that is. Have that. As previously noted in staff's comments, criteria F, the city will secure an easement with the developer for the pedestrian trail that runs through the subject property. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment: a buffer area has been identified by the PEI Department of Environment. The buffer area was determined as a result of a previous project, installation of box culverts where the stream runs under Notre Dame Street and Water Street. No construction is permitted within the buffer area. The potential developer has incorporated the existing environmental buffer into their design, providing a sidewalk path along the buffer. Impact, I, impact on city finances and budgets. Staff comment: not applicable. J, other matters as specified by this bylaw. Staff comment: in written comments received from Kim Shahab, she mentions that the site in the past has been utilized for parking for events at Green Shore. The property was never intended as a parking lot. A parking lot would not be effective use of this waterfront property. Furthermore, a parking lot is not a permitted use under the current R3 zoning. As per section 5.5 of the zoning bylaw, the city may initiate an official plan or zoning amendment for any lands, but all in accordance with this bylaw. Staff have consulted with legal services and confirmed that the city is not in the conflict of interest. Okay, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment. The subject property was owned by the town of Summerside. In 1986, the town conveyed the property to the Summerside Regional Development Corporation, SRDC, to be developed. The property was zoned institutional. In 1991, SRDC rezoned the property to downtown commercial. In 1998, the zoning was changed to R3 as a result of a zoning bylaw review process. In 2017, SRDC made an application to rezone from R3 to R4. The application was denied as there was no developmental or concept plan. Upon the dissolution of SRDC, the subject property was conveyed back to the city of Summerside in 2018. The photo below, dated 1970, shows the land as vacant infilled land. Staff review. So staff supports the application from the city of Summerside to rezone the R3 to R4 as per section 5.10, subsection B, subsection 3 of the zoning bylaw. The planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council in a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application initiated by the city of Summerside, represented by Mike Tatuska, for a portion of PID number 68742 to amend the city of Summerside bylaw from medium density R3 zone to high density residential R4 zone, be recommended to be approved by council. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and then we'll open the floor to planning board and council for discussion.
Councillor McPhilly, I wonder if we could include the previous letters there that could be read into the record as well before you.
Yes,
they're in the package.
Yes, good point. Yes, there's three letters attached here, I think, or 3 notes. I don't know if it's necessary for me to read those into the record. Council has received them and has had them prior to this meeting. If you wish, I can read them into the record, or if you...
Does the member of the public know what's in the letters? Maybe further... Pardon?
There's one from you, one from Alice.
They were read into the record. I can read them into the record if you wish. Haven't read enough yet. No.
Read them into if somebody didn't hear them, we should read them into the record.
Okay, we can do that. The first letter is a letter from Highland Enterprise Limited, Robert Arsenault, through their lawyer Cox and Palmer, dated May 15th, 2020, sent to Linda Stevenson, Development Officer, dear Mrs. Stevenson. Reapplication by the City of Summerside to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw pertaining to a portion of PID number 68742 from medium density residential R3 zone to high density residential R4 zone and Highland Enterprise Limited. I have been instructed by Mr. Arsenault, Secretary of Highland Enterprise Limited, hereinafter referred to as Highland, to make the following submission on behalf of Highland. First, for the record, Highland, as an adjacent property owner, PID number 68999 and PID number 69005, takes a neutral position on the city's application to amend the city's zoning bylaw currently in effect for a portion of PID number 68772 from an R3 zone to an R4 zone. Secondly, by way of background, Highland carries on business on PID number 6899 and PID number 69005 as a provincially licensed beverage container recycling depot, as well as a scrap metal cycling facility. Highland scrap metal recycling business was first introduced by Robert Arsenault's father, J.J. Léonce Arsenault, shortly following the end of the Second World War. Highland has operated continuously from its inception to date at its location here in Summerside at 578 Notre Dame Street. Following the late Mr. Arsenault's passing, his son Robert and grandson Patrick have taken over ownership and control the operation of Highland. As a matter of common knowledge, scrap metal recycling facilities are industrial sites collectively known as junkyard scrap metal facilities don't receive rewards for serene and tranquil environments. Neither do they receive awards for their aesthetic beauty. Scrap metal facilities employ industrial metal balers to crush and pack tons of metal for delivery to market. Recycling yards are notoriously noisy, dirty, and at times dangerous places to work. As indicated, tons of metal are moved into and out of the facility on a regular basis by noise-producing heavy industrial equipment. The work carried on by Highland at its Summerside location is no different than sketched out above. As indicated at the outset, Highland is neutral as to whether or not the zoning of the subject parcel is amendment from R3 zone to R4 zone. Notwithstanding the foregoing, Mr. Arsenault, on behalf of Highland, wants the record to reflect that regardless of the zoning applicable to the subject parcel, Highland has operated as a successful family-owned business at 578 Notre Dame Street for in excess of 70 years. And given humanity's ability to generate recyclable waste, Highland will continue to operate as a scrap metal recycling facility well into the foreseeable future. We trust any decision to develop the high-density residential housing unit next to the fully operational scrap metal recycling facility will have been thoroughly vetted by the potential developer, especially in terms of constructing to mitigate noise, maximizing visually appealing sightlines, and alternatively minimizing less appealing sightlines. Mr. Arsenault, on behalf of Highland, once again, for the record, strongly urges the city planners to inform any potential developers of the historical prominence of Highland as a functioning industrial operation and the obviously negative impact that such a facility will have on the residential housing unit constructed next door. Respectfully submitted on behalf of Patrick Arsenault, Robert Arsenault, and Highland Enterprise Limited, yours truly, David R. Hammond. As well, Your Worship, we had an email I'll read into the record from Kim Shahab, sent to Mayor Stewart on September 10th. I hope you all take some time to read a couple of emails that I will send to you. This is the first one. I would also like for you as our city councilors, who I believe will vote on the same night as the meeting about the lot of green space that is being rezoned, to take some time and evaluate the traffic that is on Greenwood Drive, mainly from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. That is very heavy coming from the industrial businesses that are all only a block or two from this piece of land, as it will be you who has the say on what this land should be used for. I think it would be nice if you've seen for yourselves exactly how much traffic is on that small street. I look forward to hearing how many of you take the time to sit and watch mainly between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., as this would be around the same time that 182 apartments would be coming and going onto the same street. Thank you, Kim Shahab. And another email, Your Worship, from Allison Hart, dated the 21st of September, sent to Councillor Ramsey. And I can read that into the record unless you want to, Councillor. Dear Ms. Ramsey, let me head this up by saying how very thankful I am to live in Summerside for the unusual number of innovative minds working together and those who put plans into action. Having said that, I'm writing to you as my councillor to express strong opposition to the proposed rezoning of the parcel of land at Hippenstall's Corner, which I understand will be discussed at the next council meeting today. Any future development of this significantly located piece of land should be given broader consideration by all residents of this end of town, if not all residents of Summerside, as it will determine the long-term direction in which we grow as a city. From my perspective, a decision to rezone will indicate the value that we place as a community on the remaining open green space within the city. and particularly as part of the truly green end of the city where so many go for peace and connection to nature. Rezoning to R4 would make a long-term difference impossible to reverse once approval given. My understanding is that R4 rezoning would include a multi-story apartment building with all this entails. The prime piece of land forms part of the treasure that is Green Shore. It could instead be set aside as a treed, landscaped area in order to protect and enhance the valuable natural resources while providing controlled public access. That's a quote from the 2019 official plan. Its proximity to the newly renovated ice pond would only add to that and be a showpiece for the quality of life which Summerside so far represents. The values shown by Council's leadership for this end of Summerside include establishment of solar park, the new Echo Park, and most recently the activity lane for pedestrians and cyclists leading from Polk Road to Credit Union Place, which naturally leads down to Green Shores. What has been established in the process is a greener corridor leading to the sea and the boardwalk. I've heard about this issue at short notice, and following are just a few points from the official plan which relate to the values Summerside holds and are relevant to questioning and rezoning of this parcel of land at the location. The purposes of the official plan include Summerside Parks and Green Space, January 2013. This plan, which lays out Council's policies for community needs across urban and suburban areas, guiding Council in the selection of suitability, size, and equipped parks at the right place and the right time. Adding more designated conservation areas to protect and enhance valuable natural resources while providing controlled public access. Extending and intensifying Summerside's network of greenways, trailways, and boardwalks with interconnections to recreational facilities, parks, and conservation areas. Promoting city green space partnerships with public and private sectors. Goals include conserve and enhance the city's traditional social character, heritage buildings, and natural environment, and ensure that new development is compatible with these values. Adding more designated conservation areas to protect and enhance valuable natural resources while providing controlled public access. At the council meeting, as my representative, please add my voice to those opposing to the rezoning with a proposal that this issue receive broader community input and thought. Sincerely, Allison Hart, North Market Street, Summerside. So those are the written submissions received, Your Worship. So back to the recommendation. We'd ask for a mover and a seconder on the planning board recommendation so we can get it into the forum for discussion. And the recommendation is that the application initiated by the City of Summerside, Mike Tutuska, for a portion of PID number 68742 to amend the city zoning bylaw from medium-density residential R3 zone to high-density residential R4 zone be recommended to be approved by council. So if we, just for the record, I guess the members of planning board are Councillor Adams, Councillor Ramsey, yourself, Your Worship, and myself as chair. So that's who would vote on the motion. So, is there a mover for that motion?
So did this go, sorry, moved by Councillor Adams?
This is moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by...
So does it go to council after this?
This recommendation would go to council.
For the full vote? For
the full vote of council at our meeting on the 19th. So we need a seconder for that motion.
Okay, I'll get us go to the 19th, then I will.
Okay.
So
it's been
got to go to a council meeting.
It still has to go to full council, and we have a mover and a seconder, and then we'll have the discussion and then the vote.
Okay.
So it's been moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Your Worship. So before we have the vote, we will open the floor for any questions or discussions.
So the vote will be to forward it to council.
Just to forward it to council, it's not a decision of council, it's a recommendation from planning board.
It's a monthly meeting.
To the monthly meeting. Councillor Ramsey.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't know you had the light on.
No,
Go ahead.
Basil, go.
No, I just, after moving forward.
I have a few questions. At our last meeting, there were a number of questions that were asked by the public, by Mr. Ford and by Kim, and I think Bima. And I wonder if all of those questions have been answered, Aaron, in this report. I think you were kind of jotting them down and at the time. It sounds like they were as I listened to but I just want to know if there was anything that wasn't addressed.
We did our best to go through the questions that were provided and provide comments that were relevant to the development.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe one was by Councillor Duran too, I think.
What's that?
About the city's conflict or something?
Yeah, I think it was answered though. It was in the.
That's in the report.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else, Councillor?
Yes, I just had one more question. So R3 is 3-story, R4 is 4-story. If those buildings were planning to go higher than a 4-story, it has to come back to council. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's identified in the report that would be a separate process that will require notification.
Okay.
And council's approval.
And the other thing I have to ask is if it goes to an R4 and this developer decides, well, I'm not going to build, changes their minds, then is there a way for council, because it wouldn't maybe be the same council going forward if these people or this organization pulls out. So is there a way for us to put it back to R3 and then if somebody else comes along 5 years down the road, then they would ask for an R4 again, and that the city can have control of what's going to go there, I guess, is my concern.
The city has the vote to go to R4.
Yeah.
The city is initiating this proposal, and the
Yes.
city has the ability to change and initiate a rezoning to something else at any point in the future.
At any point in the future, because I think that's
follow the same process.
Okay. Thank you. That's just what I have right now.
Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. And I guess just to add on that final point before I ask my own question, the city owns the land, so in a way we can control, we can vet any developer that decides that they would like to develop there, and we can discuss with them what their plans are ahead of time. So in a way we already have some control anyway, whether it's R3 or R4 or.
Yes, well, my concern was that if council changes, like if something didn't happen and we got new council and they're not privy to all this information and this debate, and then that's my concern down the road.
Okay.
That's all.
I just wanted to kind of drive home the fact that we do own the land now, just in case anybody's watching or listening and is wondering. And now I guess just for the public's awareness, and it has to do with the height that you had mentioned there in your comments. The difference between R4 and R3 as far as maximum height is, and Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw it go by in the report, it's a difference of about 11.5 feet or 3.5 meters. So as it's
what's stated in the report.
Okay, yeah. So as it is now, you can have a height of 10.5 meters or 34 feet without having to go through a process like this. Okay, just wanted to make that clear for anyone.
Any other questions from Councillor Snow?
Sorry, Gary, I cut you off there.
Used to it. Go ahead.
A couple things. First, it says on the recommendation, the very first line, says the applicant is proposing apartment buildings with underground parking. Is that, first of all, and it might be just a play on words, but is that factual? Because we're just proposing changing it to R4. The developer is proposing whatever he's proposing once we, or are we that far along that because
We're no farther along. That's just the application that the concept that we're moving forward with.
is the concept. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha. Next, has the applicant been not the applicant, the developer, since we're talking that, have they been notified of Highland's position on Highland Bottle Exchange? Because we have talked about being in discussions with a possible developer. Have they been notified that there is a bottle exchange right beside it? I'm sure they have, but have they been notified of the letter we received from the lawyer?
My understanding is the developer has been by the site more than once, and it's a very evident neighbor. There's nothing like it's unknown as far as, it's not like their enterprise that they operate is inside a building. A lot of their stuff is outside and totally visible to the public traveling by.
Okay, and I have just a couple more. There's under location criteria, there's a bullet point there that says opportunity for maximizing the number of opportunities for scenic views through higher density and taller residential buildings, but with protection of adequate view planes. What do they mean by that?
Typically right now you have, it's not all entire buildings. It's not one building all the way around. There still is view planes. You have, if you drive down Greenwood Drive, there's still view planes to the water, or...
So view for existing structures.
Basically you're saying it's not a wall of all building. There's a break between, it's not one entire building the entire way, or it doesn't block off the entire waterfront, or...
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. I think I have one more here. I was just trying to write down how's it going, Sarah, guys. And there's one saying the city will retain an easement along the stream to connect Ice Pond to Green Shore. So I remember back earlier that was part of a rendering I think we received that showed what could possibly, or the developer was thinking.
Yes.
And that included some trails or something with. So is that still?
That was in the concept. We're just highlighting to you that already in your planning documents was intended for there to be a greenway and trail connection. That's what's referred to 750 Ice Pond Greenway. That was that map and sketch to show that was already included in your master planning for your green spaces and connections throughout the city.
Okay, gotcha.
So the developer would incorporate that into their design. They have incorporated that into their design concept to show that there was going to be a walkway and trail system along there. We're just highlighting that that would be shown as an easement in the city's name.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adams and then the Deputy Mayor.
Just a couple quick, in section K, other matters as considered relevant. 1986, the town conveyed the property to SRDC to be developed. What was the plan for it at that time for development? Do we know?
The Summerside Regional Development Corporation, in my understanding, was an entity that was to develop properties in this whole Summerside area. I mean, I wasn't here in that time frame, but the property was turned over with the intent that that entity would develop the property.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was something they had in mind. And then the last sentence in that same section, photo below shows the land as vacant infilled land. I thought, was it always infilled land? I thought for some reason there was a discussion about it had been marshy or something.
So this section of what is Water Street now was not there probably in the 60s. So this was the main thoroughway. You came down Water Street up Greenwood Drive, and that's why we had that little chute. So this area was infilled for this extension of Water Street connection to South Drive.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
What year was that, Linda?
I'm not sure of the exact year. We contacted Department of Highways, and they just said it was sometimes in the 60s.
So, yeah, because that picture was taken, says 1970, so.
Yeah, I remember it being that.
Deputy Mayor.
I just want to get back to the point that Councillor Corey, you were asking with regards to Highland Bottle Exchange. I believe when the application first came from the developer for that parcel of land. The point that was made in their letter, they sent in a notice making it known that their business had always operated as it is. And they wanted the developer to be aware of that, like it was something that they did for years, for many years, and they wanted the developer to be aware, so it wouldn't be a surprise.
I think Mike,
That was my point, I was making sure that the developer was made aware of it.
I think
Thank you.
Mike said that he.
Yeah, so as you recollect, we did go to a public process in order to try and get these lands developed. As part of that, developers were did site visits. Developer in question has been following our proceedings as well as aware of what's in the area and the surrounding area.
Thank you, Director Mike. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. Just one very brief question. I'm wondering either by Director Aaron or Director Mike, has there been any indication at all through the development plans, even though they're at a very, very early stage, how close that the actual development may be to that, the edge of that buffer zone? Like, do they plan to go right up till they're legally allowed to, or is there?
We'll review when we actually get a site plan beyond a concept. You know, right now it's just a concept to say, we'll review whenever we actually, I haven't seen anything beyond the concept. You know, I can't imagine that they're gonna engage professionals to go beyond a concept until they have some comfort level that development would be able to proceed.
Okay. Is that a chat that we can have if and when the time comes?
They cannot build up into the buffer zone. It's
of course not, no,
yeah,
but
yeah. So they're 50 feet or 15 meters from the boundary on that stream side anyhow.
And that's deemed adequate by the province. And
yes, it's a provincial buffer zone.
Any other questions?
I'll just quickly follow up and add to Aaron's comments. Obviously, it would be the next step that you would enter into the development agreement with the proposed developer. You would manage that process, manage the development, manage kind of moving forward as well.
Councillor Snow.
Just on to what Justin was just, that buffer zone would be retained by us, or is that still, would that be the developers moving forward?
It's the developer's land. We would take an easement over the walkway area so that we have access through it and for all residents. You know, it's their land, but it's a buffer or environmentally sensitive area that they cannot develop it.
They can't develop,
yeah.
But
we don't take ownership of it.
We don't take, but would we take ownership of it if we're talking about trails and green?
We would take an easement. We would take an easement over it.
Easement, okay, gotcha.
Not retain ownership.
Yeah.
Councillor Ramsey, you have anything else there? Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry, I do have one that I missed. It's on page 8 of the report, section J. Other matters as specified in this bylaw. I want to go particularly to your comment, the staff comment. The parking lot would not be effective use for this water property. Furthermore, a parking lot is not a permitted use under the current R3 zoning. Can you remember, like when you're compiling the report, Director Aaron, what was the reasoning behind that? Like as far as the thoughts behind that, was it because it was such a prime piece of land? Would you remember anything from the report?
Yes, you have prime waterfront property, effective use being a parking lot. And the other part is a parking lot standalone is not permitted in an R3 lot. R3 zoning is to be residential, and a parking lot, a standalone parking lot is not permitted in that zone. It may have been used by different groups on an event basis, but to be established and put infrastructure into it to make it an actual parking lot is not a permitted use.
Okay, so then is an R3 zoning, I know sometimes you can have an institutional, such as maybe say, for example, community connections in the back area?
Check the zoning, what they are there.
Or they'd be institutional maybe. Yeah. So an R3 zoning is primarily for mixed residential?
You can have, R3 is, you can have R1, R2, or R3. In R3, you can have anything below it, so it could be single family, it could be side-by-side, semi-detached. There's a bunch of other uses listed there in R3, but you could have all those three types of residential. Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions from planning board or council? Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, and it was just regarding the green space. There was a comment in there, I believe it was something like 110. What was that?
There's a map there that shows all the current conservation space or green space
Yeah. So there's
within the region of this, within 2 kilometers.
Right.
I think there was some questions raised during the meeting as far as
there's ample green
parkland
space
and conservation spaces in the area.
Right. Okay. And I just wanted to go back on one other thing. I think it was Councillor Ramsey had said, does it, in the future council, if it would go back to I just wanted to make sure that it was understood that it just doesn't automatically revert back to an R3. It would have to be changed back. It's the same process.
Same process.
Yeah.
We'd have to go back.
Yeah. And I did only have one call on this, and it was from Highland Bottle Exchange, and I've had a couple of conversations with them, and that's the reason the letter has come forward too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council or questions? Anything else from staff? So the recommendation is there. We read it into the record. It's been moved and seconded. Are we ready for the question? And just for the planning board to vote, yes. And this is, to be clear for the public, this is moving it forward to council for debate with full council at the monthly meeting on the 19th. Yeah.
19th, is it?
Yeah. The 19th, yes. Yeah.
And just to be clear, I guess, planning board is making a recommendation to the entire council. The entire council will then debate it.
Yes.
But the planning board is making a recommendation.
Yeah.
That's at
So
6:30.
planning board can either approve or defeat it.
That meeting is at 6:30 on the 19th.
6:30 on the 19th, yes.
That's
Councillor
fine.
Snow?
Just one last comment, and it's one thing I'm sort of struggling with is, and I know we got legal advice, but when we're the owner and the applicant, I struggle with the conflict thing and how you're not in a conflict. I really do, and I have trouble seeing my way through not being in a conflict when you're the applicant. I'm just, that's sort of just there in my head.
I understand that, but I know there was legal advice sought, and
it's also, it's clearly outlined in your bylaw that the city can act as an applicant. It was clearly, it wasn't like it was clearly written out. The city may act, I'm not sure the exact wording, but the city may initiate a development of any lands or their own lands. And in this case, it's their own land.
Yeah. And you are correct, it does raise those.
Yeah. So beyond us reading that as well, we went to our own legal and asked them for their opinion, and that's why it's stated like that in the report.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to draw the point out to Councillor Corey and for all of us to consider on the core block parcel of properties that the city was involved in to own that property for a very short period of time with the intention that there would be a developer come along. And our responsibility at that point was because there was no SRDC or a regional development corporation, and so the city was put in that situation, and we had a choice. We could leave it sit the way that it is, but if we were going to see some kind of a development happen, the city had to, for a short period, take that property so that we could get the land ready. And this is basically the same thing. The city owns it, but it's a developer that has the interest in the land if that application is gone forward or not.
Councillor Snow, I did find it says, as per section 5.5 of the zoning bylaw, the city may initiate an official plan or zoning amendments for any lands, but all in accordance with this bylaw. So we're allowed to do it. We just have to make sure we follow our own bylaws, which we're doing.
Yeah, and follow the process. So, okay, are we ready for the vote, planning board?
ready for the vote to move forward
To move it to the 19th.
to the council meeting.
Yeah. So, all those in favor with the recommendation, say aye.
Right?
Aye. Contrary? Hearing none, motion is passed unanimously.
So that will be before council
On the
19th.
on the 19th, Your Worship.
Members of the public are welcome to attend, and anybody.
And that will be the final decision will be made that evening with full council's participation. So the next item on our planning board agenda, Your Worship, is a recommendation for a variance at 285 All-Weather Highway. Supporting explanation purpose. The purpose of the variance is to allow for an increase to the building height of an accessory building, allowing an accessory building with a proposed height of 5.26 meters, 17.25 feet, where an accessory building height of 4.5 meters, 14.7 feet is permitted. The roof pitch on the accessory is designed and will be constructed to match the existing roof pitch, a 12-12 pitch on the existing residence. So the pictures there, Your Worship, show the proposed accessory building and the existing single-family home. Shows the elevation, the front elevation of the house, and the pitch of the roof. So the background.
Sorry, I was just trying to follow you there, Mr. Chairman. Which height? There's 3 roofs there. Which one is there?
I don't think it's the same. The height of the house roof. It's the height of the existing building, or the accessory building, which is the one on the left-hand side. That's the one we're discussing.
The intent is to show that.
Over here, sorry, I was looking at the picture, sorry.
Just to show the pitch of his existing two gables that he has in the house now, and he's trying to duplicate that same look, which was the reason why he needs the height variance.
So the variance will allow it to look the same as the house. So the background, the applicant has applied for a building permit for the proposed accessory building. The accessory building exceeds the allowable height as per the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The report under section 7.2 of the zoning bylaw, variance application shall be considered by council, planning board, or the development officer as applicable against the following tests for justifying a variance. All applicable criteria must be met. A, that the hardship is due to unique physical conditions of the lot or property, including small lot size, irregular lot size, existing building location on the property, and exceptional topographical conditions which make it impractical to develop or strict conformity with the bylaw standards. Exceptional topography conditions may include, but are not limited to, trees, slope of land, etc. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The existing building slope is established, and the applicant wants to have the roof pitch on the proposed accessory building match the roof pitch of the existing residence. B, that the proposed variance meets the general intent of the official plan. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The variance meets the intent of the official plan. C, the proposed variance meets the general intent of the zone. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The variance meets the intent of the zone, which is an R1. D, that the proposed variance would not impact negatively on adjacent properties or on the essential character of the surrounding neighborhoods, including taking into consideration any comments from neighbors. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. 6 letters were delivered to 6 properties within 30 meters of the boundary of the subject property. Comments from adjacent property owners were due on or before September 21st, 2020. No verbal or written comments were received from the notified property owners. Technical Services staff review. Technical Service staff support the application from Duke and Betsy Cormier. As per section 7.3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the variance from Duke and Betsy Cormier to allow an accessory building height of 5.26 meters, 16% variance, bears the recommendation of planning board. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. Is there any question or discussion? Seeing none, we call for the question. All those in favor with the recommendation, say aye. Planning
Aye.
board? Contrary? The motion carried unanimously. And that, Your Worship, wraps up the agenda for Planning Board, and thank you all for your involvement.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. It was a long session, but we'll continue on with the meeting. If we move on to Police and Fire and Emergency Service, Councillor Ramsey, the floor is yours. Thank you, staff, Aaron and Tech Services.
That's a great report.
And Mr. T, thank you, Mike.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask for the approval of the agenda. And so the first thing on the agenda is, well, I've got a couple of things that I'm just going to go over first, and then we will get into that. But in meeting with police services the other day, we are pleased to announce that a bylaw enforcement and unsightly premises officer has been put in place. We are making some internal changes as to how to deploy resources. Moving forward on most files, our commissionaire will be the first point of contact and follow up with the resident. We found over the years that 90% of files are dealt with successfully after the initial conversation. By having our commissionaire be the point of contact, we will free up other police services for higher priority police work. As always, we are thankful that so many of our residents take great pride in their properties and keep them tidy for the enjoyment of themselves and their neighbors. So that is pretty good news. All councillors have been wanting a bylaw officer, and now we have one. So I know it's a little late in the season, but that's how long it took us to get this in place. So thank you, Chief Poirier, for your support in this endeavor. So are there any questions on that?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So for a bylaw officer, will it be specific areas, or would it be anything, for example, any bylaw that's in the city's books? Like I'm thinking pesticides, I've received a call this week on it, and I'm just wondering if that would be appropriate.
Okay. Oh, so
for starters, it would just be the unsightly properties bylaw, dealing with garbage and probably long grass at this moment.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions on this?
A
little excitement?
I just want to comment. Thanks to yourself, police. Obviously, it's something I started to push for very early, and I do think we will see some benefits of it down the road. Obviously, the timing now is not great as we're going into fall and winter, but I do think it'll definitely free up some resources. And at the end of the day, if we have more police resources doing police work like I've been arguing for almost 2 years now, I think that's a benefit to everybody. So thank you, and thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councillor.
I don't think we argued. I think we all agreed that we're trying to get one place, and after the meeting the other day, it was great to see the chief ask, or whatever word you want to use, to get the commissioner to look after some of these calls.
Yeah. It's been a work in progress, that's for sure.
Yeah, Your Worship, it's just, it's only a start, you know, if things work out. Maybe the commissioner will be given extra duties, but we have to go through the core commissioner as well, obviously.
Right.
You know, they have the final say, and then they have to check with the head office in Moncton, or St. John, sorry. And so we've got the approval right now. So hopefully by this coming Monday, he will start the extra duties.
He'll start his duties on Monday, and that's good to hear. I really appreciate that, as I know all council do. So thank you. So moving on, we're going to stay with police, and I would like to touch a little bit about the fentanyl here on the island. The province, as well as the city of Summerside, have great concern for the residents and feel it's important to make everyone aware that fentanyl is in the area and it's very dangerous. Also want to make folks aware that Narcan kits are available in pharmacies, addiction centers, and the province's needle exchange program. The province has issued a warning that fentanyl is present and dangerous. It has been linked to 8 overdoses since April, so please be aware. It is important to note that all police officers in Summerside carry Narcan spray on their tool belts. Summerside Police Services are working with joint forces operations in trying to determine how fentanyl is being transported into Summerside and surrounding areas. So just want to let folks know that that the police are on it, and maybe I'll let Chief Dave just speak for a moment on that.
Thank you, Councillor. And further to what you mentioned also, our media person, Sergeant Blackhair, did an in-depth interview with Compass yesterday, which was on the news last night.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very good article, and we're doing our darn best to find out how the stuff is getting into our city and the entire province, actually.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
It is very scary. I mean, you get this stuff on your fingertips, it can cause death, get through your skin, and you could die from it. Yeah. Just a small dose.
Yeah, it's very scary. And you know, last year I did the drug awareness form for information to parents and young people, and this year with COVID, it just seems to be impossible to try and get some more information and education out there to the folks. But I was talking with someone the other day, and we talked about doing it maybe in a 4-room session, like maybe 50 people in a room, and the presenters go from room to room every half hour and do like a 2-hour session. So that's still in, and I've been talking to a couple of doctors about that last week. So that's still in the back of my mind, and I will talk with the principal at Three Oaks because he's very interested in that information as well. So I'd like to see something like that happen, but again, we're council and we're working hard at things, and you know, we're not police, but I'd really like to be able to get some information and education out there for the folks that are wanting it. So with that, if we have any questions, council? No? We're good? Okay, thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to go into Halloween. So Dr. Heather Morrison, Chief Public Health Officer, has announced that Halloween will take place this year. She is advising that children should only visit households in their neighborhoods of people they know. Treats should be placed on the table where it can easily be cleaned rather than handing the treats to the children. Trick-or-treaters should avoid crowd gatherings at the doors, and everyone should maintain physical distancing. Dr. Morrison also asks that we respect homes that do not wish to take part in Halloween this year. So if they have their lights out, that we could respect that. Our curfew is going to remain at 8 o'clock. Chief and Councillor Snow and I just kind of were chatting, you know, wondering about changing the curfew to 7. And then as Councillor Snow said, well, if you changed it to 7, then there'd be more kids out at the same time and would be more condensed, and so the social distancing would go out the door.
There will be a resolution on the 19th for that?
Well, I think we're just going to leave it for 8 o'clock, Mayor.
We need a resolution that the curfew will be over at 8, so that could
Oh,
be.
no, the chief and I talked about that.
So some years ago, though, we had to come to council every year for the curfew.
Okay.
But one of the meetings, it was decided it would remain at 8 p.m. unless changed by council in a future meeting.
So we don't have to.
So you don't need a resolution?
So we don't need a resolution.
No, we don't, Your Honor. Worship.
So besides that, 3 or 4 years ago, Madam Chair, there probably should be a press release the day or two before, just to remind people, because I'm not sure when it was, whether it was 4 years ago or 20 years ago or 3. So if the curfew is going to be at 8 o'clock, we should make sure It's a reminder for the people.
Police services, Your Worship, will be making a release a few days before.
Okay, good.
Right. Thank
with,
you.
With these same conditions as the health office put out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Poirier and Mayor Stewart. And the next thing on the list is the Christmas parade. So we did get approval for that. Dr. Heather Morrison gave approval, so we're pretty excited. I see Chief Ron Inman out there in the audience. And wanting to let you know that the Santa Claus Parade will be going ahead this year. Summerside Fire Department will be hosting the parade for the second year in a row. This year it will be a stationary parade where the floats and displays are parked along Water Street and the residents will drive by. So it is a complete opposite of how a normal parade would go.
The date and time is?
I'm going to give you that.
Okay.
So it is Friday, November 27th at 6 o'clock. Right, Chief? We came up with 6 o'clock. We have a little committee of about 6 of us who are, we've had 2 meetings already, so there's still lots of planning to do. But I'd like everyone to know that the registration is free again this year. The fire department is asking that anyone who registers, though, just give a donation, and all monies donated will be going to a number of organizations that contribute to families who need support at Christmas. Thank you again to the Summerside firefighters for your great work in the community. So again, if anyone wants to fill out a registration, they can just get a hold of Chief at the fire department or drop in. He's there every day. And so November 27th at 6 p.m. So I'll open the floor.
I just have one quick.
Yes.
So with the parade being stationary and people moving, what will be the status on giving out trinkets,
Treats.
candies, and so on?
Okay, so there won't be any carry this year, and I don't think we were allowed last year because of, unless people were walking maybe with them, right?
The parade was moving. This time
Right,
the parade
exactly. Yeah, no, because of COVID, and so the cars are going to be driving through. Everybody's going to gather down at Credit Union Place. And Robert Gallant from Michael's Pizzeria, he's always a great helper in our community. So Robert's going to be down there directing the traffic. The food bank will be there for anybody that wants to take some food to donate. And also, so the cars will leave there, and all the floats and will be parked, and the cars will be just driving through. And we think Santa will be right at the very end, and we're hoping that's going to be at the Welcome to Summerside sign out at Water Street East. So, Councillor McCollum.
Just one question, and you may have mentioned it and I missed it. There's a new executive director for downtown Summerside, and are they involved in the parade and the committee?
Yes, so
Cool.
Angie is on the, downtown director is on our committee with us. There's 3 firemen, the chief and myself and Angie. So, and I need to say we have Daniel Albert on our committee. And I think Daniel has raised $12,000 to date. I'm just saying, like, what a terrific thing for him to be doing this for the children. Anyway. Councillor Duran.
Thanks, Councillor Ramsey. Just so it's on the record of somebody bringing it up, is there any plan, I don't know whether it's going to be maybe Robert as he's sending cars away, to maybe mention, to the drivers of the car to, because if you have everybody in the car looking to the side, there's...
The driver's not allowed to look.
Is there, I've seen it come up a couple times just on, Facebook talking about the parade, like it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there any plans to just get a little suggestion out there somehow mentioning that, because it's bound to happen.
It's
Or
bound to
possibly-
happen, and I see
possible to
Chief has his light on there, so.
Well, just to mention that we certainly will be involved in patrolling, and also we may have to block some streets off for an hour or so when that happens, to lessen the chance of an accident. And I believe no one will be allowed to get out of their vehicles to go shake hands and leave on their floor or anything like that.
That's right. There is no walking, and we have 30 volunteers from the EMS students who are coming in to stand at the blockades, and the fire trucks, I believe, Chief, are going to be blocking the road on the south side, if that's what, yeah. And yes, there will be, Robert will, like I said, we've only had 2 meetings so far, so we have some things to work out, and but we're moving forward, and the parade will happen.
Yes, okay, thanks. Just because we're notorious for tailgating in the city, so.
They're going to get a good talking too, Justin.
So when the band
Yes,
is,
thank you.
when the band is set up there with the guitars, people are not going to be allowed to listen to us?
Well, they're going to have to stop for a minute. Maybe we'll get to sing the same song again 30 times. Anyway, so if that's it for questions, Chief Inman, did you have anything to add on that? Nothing. Did I cover most of it? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so there are no more questions on that. I think we can get to Willow Street and Elm Street intersection. First of all, I'd like to mention that this is a school zone where elementary children attend kindergarten to grade 6. There are many children that walk to school because, as you know, it's one of our local elementary schools in the city. To my understanding, this has been a school zone that hasn't received much attention over the years. Since I've been elected and during my campaign, I received a number of calls and emails from both residents of Summerside and the principal at Elm Street School that this intersection is a concern. There is a lot of traffic in this area. The scenario is dangerous for little children. So the request I am putting forward today on behalf of these residents and school staff is that we put a 4-way stop and a crossing guard at Willow and Elm Street and 2 speed bumps on Elm Street. That was next on the agenda, but that's all part of the school zone, so I'm just adding it in there. So I know that there has been a study done. I just read the study, and what it says that a 4-way stop would not be recommended for Elm and Willow, but the study also says that they did not take into consideration that this is a school zone and that there are many small children that walk in that area. So, well, sure, if they, yeah, but I'm just saying, but yeah, I'm just doing my thing, and then I'm going to open the floor and they can do, thanks, Bruce. So anyway, that is my thought on that. So now I'm going to open the floor to, I don't know if it's,
You want me to start? Just
you
with some-
go ahead and start.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So just to bring council back to, I guess, the origination of this request. So it was at the September committee meeting of council where council gave direction to staff to investigate 4 particular areas of concern,
Yes.
either from a traffic management or speed perspective.
Yes.
Or maybe both. And so police services and technical services work together to undertake reviews of these 4 issues. We will take the next few minutes to walk you through our findings, and while staff will have made recommendations on each of the 4 situations in question, we are looking for council's direction on how they want to proceed.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess you all have a copy of the report in your meeting package that was sent out there last Friday. We had tried to collect some data in the intersection locations. We basically used our traffic counters down. We placed them in all legs of the intersection for 2 days to give us a 2-day count. Then staff go through what's called the always stop warrant review to see if they meet certain criteria that are from the Transportation Association of Canada. Those warrants are there to, I guess, try and provide optimum safety as well as efficiency in the intersection. So the counts were completed, and we basically had 650 on Elm Street and 617 on Willow per day. Again, criteria as far as the volume of intersection, as was mentioned, didn't meet the warrants for an all-way stop. Again, yes, the warrants are to look at the whether it's pedestrians, excuse me, and again, they took I think it was a quarter or a third or 300 kids, say, that might be using the intersection, whether that's, we tried to put a realistic or a larger number on it, not to have a small number, to see if that plays into, it still didn't sway the numbers on the intersection. Again, there didn't appear to be delays on the minor intersection, which would be another criteria if you're getting excessive delays on one leg of the intersection to consider going to a four-way stop. And again, the other thing that was considered as well, or for note there, is that there is a couple of, there is one sketch there, I think it might be in there, Robbie's one, or who's got the control as the meeting package? Oh, is it on this computer right here?
Oh, that's, it's gone. Oh.
Sorry. They're all gone pink or something. We just page down to a map. There's a map of the intersection if anybody has any there. Yep. So there is a couple of crosswalks that are up from the intersection that I understand have crossing guards there now. Again, if I leave that with the police as far as where those crossing guards are located. If the three intersections were there, if they felt that there was more students are crossing down at the intersection, that potentially one of those two could be reallocated to down to Willow and Elm, if that seemed to be the busier of the two locations. Again, they felt at Willow, and again, the second comment was, I'm just going to skim in through some of the notes there, when they also looked at saying some of the signage that's at the intersection for the pedestrian crossing, some of the signage could be updated as far as it's supposed to be double-sided on both sides. So some improvements could be made at the actual signage. And at the time when they did the review, again, we're into the fall, as far as the line paintings don't last all very long, as far as based on the quality of paint that we're now using. So there could be some improvements done with the actual signage. Again, when the next question we looked at was the speeding on Elm Street. So again, we used the counters to give us the exact speeding that would be happening. Again, this is my own anecdotal as far as we're talking about speeding. Usually we're trying to target the excessive speeders. My own personal thinking is that anybody traveling more than 20 over on a city street would be an automatic considered an excessive speeder, which is what we do these reports, and we collect them and we try and provide that information over to the police as the counts come up to say, and here's the areas that we ourselves are noticing. We pass over the entire information, but it's a lot of data. So we try and just highlight where we think there's more, our percentage going more than 20 kilometers over. In this location, we had 11% of the vehicles were going more than 60 over, so that would be in 2 days, 150 instances. We also have the data that we have it down. We can tell exactly within the 15 minutes of when those speeding instances are happening. So then we looked at during the school zone or the school period, and when those speeds were happening there, and that number of 11% went down to 6% of the drivers, or 25 instances over 2 days where they were traveling over 60 kilometers an hour. So again, we try and share that information with police services so that they can use it to the best of their ability as far as when they have forces available. So again, so there was some chatter, and I guess there were some concerns about the speeding and other measures that could be used to possibly reduce the speed. Again, we talked about an option of doing speed bumps. We have deployed them in locations around the city before. We have taken the opportunity to try and collect data before they go down and after they go down. And again, they're being installed with the intent to try and reduce the excessive speeder, not necessarily the people that are abiding by it. You're really trying to target the ones that are going excessively. And we have one actually on Willow that's actually a permanent one. It was a number of years ago, was requests of speeding on Willow. We put it down before, got the speeds. The speeds after the placement of the speed bump of asphalt The speeds did drop for a period of time. A year or so later, they were back up what they were prior to the speed hump or bump being placed. We recently put one down on our Kona Street last year, the year before, and we captured the data there again before and after. We had captured it earlier this year. I'm not sure the date, maybe it was in July, or I'd have to double check the exact date. But we still are having excessive speeders. The number of them has not dropped with the installation of the speed hump. And on that location, we're only 2 lots away from the speed hump where it is, and we're still having, so people are really flying along and then just either just braking hard before they go over the hump or bump, or just going over it. So again, we did look at those to see how effective they are, trying to come up with other alternatives beside just those speed bumps. We searched around other jurisdictions to see what they were doing. Again, that was part of the thing. We thought we would try and look at other things of what we could do. Not to confuse the terminology, like what we have down, we're just calling it a speed bump. It's very short in distance and a smaller height. We researched another area that was doing a speed hump, a H as in hump. Again, it was probably 4 inches high, but it was an asphalt, and it was probably the length of this desk or a car length. I don't know, I actually drove them, and I did a couple little pictures of them and videos if you're interested to see it. The video is a minute long. I followed along. It's more rural than, it'd be similar, more rural, but the humps were down. I could not keep up to the vehicle in front of me, and they would slow down and brake hard at the actual hump. They were going 40, 50, up to 70 kilometers an hour, and I wasn't gaining on the car. I was going that, and I wasn't gaining on the car head. So they are effective to slow you down for the length of ourselves, the length of this room prior to it, and after that, the cars are just gunning it to. We are trying to do something, but is not probably targeting the excessive speeding that they were trying to target with those devices. So again, to summarize on this one, it didn't meet the all-way warrant stops from the TAC Association that we went through. There is possibly some improvements of the crosswalk at Wilma and Elm as far as signage, to update them to make sure they meet the current signage, as far as having them double-sided on both sides, as well as adding a stop ahead or crosswalk ahead sign. Again, freshen up the paintings. Again, in this instance, we have, as you mentioned, it's in a school zone, and we have crosswalks in different areas, but this one's at a school zone. If we can encourage the students to use the crosswalks where we actually have 2 crossing guards now, and as I stated, if this other intersection or 2 of the 3 are at higher volumes, to deploy or reallocate the resources to the busier ones. Again, as we mentioned, we'll try and coordinate excessive speeding times occurrence with the police services. And again, the next step we're trying to do is, if it doesn't, is to add temporary radar in locations. And I guess the other opportunity we have is working with the school. If K to 6 are going to be our walkers, if we can either do something to work on an education with I'm not sure what we're allowed to do, or so what the schools are allowed to do as far as assemblies, and how we can get information out with that regarding proper crosswalk etiquette and what they should be doing coming and going to school, not just at that crosswalk, but throughout the city as well, at any other crosswalk. So that's kind of the recap of Elm and Willow report that you have in front of you. There's other documentation that supports it to show. There's the typical speed summaries that show there, and a little map of this location. That's kind of a long-winded, short explanation, but
Well,
that's the recap of.
that's the recap of
Yeah,
it.
of the day that we did at that location.
I just have a couple of things on that, Aaron, and just my opinion.
Sure.
Because it is a school zone, I think if the speed bumps are there, that the traffic, because they're in a school zone, that they will slow down. They're not gonna have a bunch of kids and then slow down and go, oh, I must speed up there. Those kids, like, I think that might, register with people that it means to slow down. So personally, I think speed bumps would be important to have there. And one of the things in the report says to contact, the police. And I'm going through this report, and not just for this street, but the other streets that we have in here. And everyone says contact the police, but I know the police are too busy and they just can't be there all the time. So I know that that's sort of not an option. It's an option, but it's not an option. The other thing is that you say for the kids, like the kids coming down Willow, when they come down Willow, they can't cross, there's no sidewalk for them to go up. They have to go across the crosswalk.
Yeah.
They can't go up to their right because there's no sidewalk there. So they have to cross the street on Willow. And I think a four-way stop would give that person coming up Willow from the racetrack a better visual if he stops and the kids are coming across the crosswalk, to at least see the children on the crosswalk.
I guess our point there, if they're on Willow, if they're going east and west on Willow, if there's a crosswalk, majority of the kids are crossing, there's a crosswalk at the trail. If they're coming up off of Northumberland Street, and if the kids are coming from the east end of the city, they're
Yes.
walking on the sidewalk, and when they get to that intersection, that part of Elm Street, that's where the stop is now. So the cars are actually stopping on Elm Street now for the kids to cross that are going east and west on, I guess it's hard to
Yeah, but they're coming down Willow from like SIS, is what I mean. They can get down, they can walk down that sidewalk, but when they get to Willow and Elm, there's nowhere for them to go except across the street, and if they're little people, there's not a good visual there. Because we went up, Corey and I went up and stood there for quite some time and watched the cars go through, and anyway, there was not a good visual there. So I felt if they stopped, and then they might have at least a chance to see the children on the crosswalk.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just to clarify, you said there's not a good visual there. At which point?
So,
Sorry.
okay, so if you're coming from SIS down Willow, okay, so you're coming down, and there's a nice little sidewalk there, okay? So the children would stop there, the crosswalk is then in front of them, but when this back here where there's no stop sign, they either go straight through on Elm, or they can turn up to, they go straight through on Willow, or they can turn up to Elm. So when they're coming down Willow, if they decide to turn, there's not a good visual there. That's what the cars were doing. Instead of turning onto Elm Street over to their right, they were going directly into the left lane, weren't they, Corey? And like out of 10 cars, 8 cars did that. That was very strange, and they were waving at us. We were standing there watching, and they're waving, but they don't know what we're watching. It was just a very strange scenario. So my concern are the children on that crosswalk, and I feel if there is a stop sign there, that at least the kids would have a chance if they're coming across it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I'll open the floor to whoever is next, and Carrie? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I do drop off and pick up here every day. My procedure is I pull up on Hawthorne, and my son walks to crosses Hawthorne just because it's quieter street, and then catches the crossing guard who gets him safely to the other side. I made that decision because I felt it was better than me trying to stop on Elm Street, just because it's busier. I let the crossing guard take care of the safety part of it. Just wondering, have we ever, or has it ever been done, Chief, where many municipalities looked at just one-way drop-offs? Like right now, you have Elm, and it's going both ways, and they're dropping off, and they're running both ways from both sides of the car. So if we're just, or say we're coming down Elm, and that's on the school side, and all drop-offs occur on that side? Has that ever been?
Not really, but pretty hard to regulate that unless you made it a one-way street.
Can we make it a one-way street for school
that's up to council.
just from like 8 till like 8:15 to 8:45, and like 3 till 3:15?
That can happen. Whether the motorists would listen to that, I mean,
Well, if you put pylons
you know,
right there, what are they gonna do? I mean, if you just go to the tree streets, say if you went from like Willow and you put pylons all the way, like, you know, put a dozen pylons up to say what, Avon or Maple, and it wasn't where the sidewalk is, so then they can stop, let their kid out on the sidewalk side, the student can walk down, rather than being stopped on both sides. It becomes just a one-way for 45 minutes of every day.
I think it would be easier to regulate if it was one-way Monday to Friday,
Right.
you know, during school hours. Then setting times would be very hard to regulate.
Right.
An hour in the morning, an hour at noon, an hour after school, very hard to regulate.
I like the idea, like I like the thought of it, safety-wise. I'd be concerned parking-wise because they're already parking both sides and down all the sides, so Hawthorne, all the other side streets along there are still getting parked on, so I don't know how the pickup would occur.
You could still use your side streets like Hawthorne,
Poplar.
Chestnut, Poplar, Avon, whatever runs Willow, like for the drop-offs, because they can catch a crosswalk to go across to the other side. So you can still use those side streets for drop-off, but your drop-off and pickup would only be on the Elm Street side of the road. You wouldn't be allowed to stop on the right side going up. Like, do you know what I mean? And make it a one-way, and then kids, if they're getting out, they're going to the sidewalk. They're not, because what I see when I'm on Hawthorne is you have children who, like, the parents are going up Elm Street, kids are getting out and they're running across, and there might not always, they're trying to get down to the crossing guard, but people are nice, they stop and they let the kid cross before they should, and we have a habit of being too nice of drivers for some reason. And then, like, you know what I mean? It's just, there's a few, like, close calls, right? Because even myself, then what I'll do is I'll turn around and go back towards Duke, because I just avoid it unless it quiets down a bit. If there's a quiet moment, I'll go, but.
And I think that's certainly something that we can talk about, like maybe because it's an idea, right? And I think we should bring it forward. But I think if we can just maybe stay on this four-way, Carrie, and what do you think about this? When you think about this and you drive your son there, like, do you have any opinion on that? Like that we could. Not that I don't like that other idea, but I'm just trying to stay on topic here with this four-way stop.
No, but I'm saying in addition to what you're saying for the four-way, to help with the safety of it, because right now, like, I mean, your police are down there all the time. Like, I see them now more than ever. And the problem with this year is that the school boards have said if you can drop you and pick up your child, please do so to
more traffic,
eliminate bus and for COVID issues. So somebody like me who would usually just do drop off in the morning now also does pick up in the afternoon, just to help.
There's more traffic around.
So there is a lot more traffic.
Yeah.
Can there be a drop-off in that parking lot someplace? Why does the
You're not
drop-off
really
have to be on
allowed
the
to.
street?
Elm Street have sent out a letter,
Yeah,
that parking lot is bus only.
It's for buses
just
only.
Bus
Buses and
only, and cars
staff.
used to go in there, but it's, nobody is
Not
permitted
allowed.
now.
Yeah, it's for buses and staff, right? Yeah.
I think to Carrie's point, it'd be important to take a drive down there as counselors in the morning and realize how busy it is to have one dedicated drop-off for the number of kids there and the number of parents dropping people off. I don't think it's a reality to have, they'd still be being dropped off in every side street in the parking lot. Like, that's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
It is a busy area. I can say as a counselor that is for that area, anybody I've talked to supports a four-way stop.
Yeah.
The people on Perry and coming up Willow, and like I said this to somebody earlier. I think we really, as counselors, need to take into consideration the people living in that area and what they want. And I brought up the idea what they were doing in Charlottetown, where a number of residents, if they felt they wanted a four-way stop or whatever, people in that area got some sort of petition sign. And that's how Charlottetown Council are sort of putting it back on the community, because they're the ones that live there, they're the ones that walk there, they're the ones that see everything. And we did go and stand at that intersection and met with a resident, and it is significant. I think the reason is that when you look at the picture, that intersection is sort of offset. So I think when they get to that Perry Extension.
It's not aligned.
They cut, just thinking they're at the intersection, and I think they cut over. But I personally, and I know we went over this with the four-way stop on Notre Dame, that, you know, it wasn't recommended that there was, and maybe that's factual, maybe based on a book that you read, there is some legitimacy to that, but I think sometimes just, and it's not common sense, that's, and I might have used that when we were talking about Notre Dame and Duke, but I just think some public input and how they value their intersections that they live in and what they want to see in their neighborhood should play very important in our decisions we're making as counselors. So I just know from hearing residents in that area with kids that it is important to them that that intersection, be it for pedestrian traffic and for vehicle traffic coming along Willow and the speed, a four-way stop was requested. So.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. Councillor Durant.
Thanks, Councillor Ramsey. Just a couple of things. Just wanted to make a point of clarification or correction. Maybe you can shed some light on it. But I think when you just made your opening remarks, you said that the data that was in the study didn't take into account school hours?
Sorry. No, they did. No, that they did the report, and I believe it said we did not take into account the amount of small children that would be.
Okay, because it's 42 kilometers an hour average during school hours. 6% going 60 kilometers an hour or higher. I just wasn't sure if I misheard or if you misspoke, but it was just a read error, I guess.
No, it was on here. Yeah.
What's for Chief Dave or Director Aaron, has there been any, I know they have one up by Athena and I think Three Oaks, has there been any effectiveness of, you know, making the speed in a school zone, you know, like 25 or 30 between 8 and 4, that sort of idea,
Yeah.
Does that tend to work? Or do you even have the data that would support that?
Well, Councillor, I don't have the data before me. I guess it does happen in other jurisdictions where but then you lower the speed and they still don't follow the rules a lot of times, and that's why they get tickets. But it's something that can be looked at, certainly.
Just as an alternative, because I know there were some
for all
alternatives
school
listed
zones.
there. Yeah, I mean, not just this one, but all of them. Because I know, you know, when you're driving and you see some of them are, you know, fluorescent colors, the signs, you know, this is the new speed limit during the school day. It gets your attention, and I mean, at least for me, I mean, it gets my attention, and I follow. You know, there's one out in Crapo by the school there, and there's one up west, even on the highway. We have one by Three Oaks and Athena. It changes between 8 and 4, I think, and I just wasn't sure if those are effective or if they're just
another good idea.
You know, like the signs that you see that say radar. Obviously, there's nobody saying there's radar, but it gets your attention and you slow down. And, just wanted to kind of present that as another idea. I know there's some crosswalk improvements suggested there and a couple of other things, but I didn't see that one, so just maybe it's something to think about as well.
Thank you, Justin, and you and Carrie had some great ideas there. So I think, you know, as a council that we can maybe sit down at some point and just discuss the school zones and what we're going to be able to do to improve them. And most of them are in pretty good shape. I think it's Elm Street that kind of, nothing's ever happened there for years and years and years. So, you know, I think I'd be interested in seeing some changes. Did you just have something?
Yeah, I just want to express, like, I'm just getting a little scared is probably not the word, but the precedent we're setting, putting stop signs up, not everywhere, but, and I certainly support the one that we put in Notre Dame, but it's just, it's getting kind of, I'm kind of weary, because if we start putting them up every time somebody requests one, and I know there's lots of complaints here, and it very well may be warranted, that's fine, but people are going to start to assume that it's really easy to get one of these at the intersection they live at when we're, you know, putting them up everywhere. And again, I don't want to necessarily say that I don't support this one, but I just want to be, and I want everyone to be kind of conscious of the fact that we're kind of on the way to sending a message that it's really easy to get a four-way stop put up anytime and anywhere. Yeah, I mean, as for this, I'm certainly still willing to talk about it, and maybe it will be one that we all agree should go there, but I just wanted to make that point before things get out of hand.
Yeah, and I guess I'll speak on that because there have been some, especially Summerside North, there's been a lot of long streets there without stop signs. And I think that whole area of Summerside is one of the areas that have been ignored for a long time. I really do. And there's a lot of happy people up there with what has taken place, with the few stop signs that were put in. People are very happy, their children are safe, they feel safe. So I think the only danger is that if we don't listen to our residents when they're asking for things and maybe have Aaron and they do go and check this out, and then, so we have both sides of the coin then. And then we can kind of, and as Corey and I did, just go sometimes and just take a peek and stand there for 10 or 15 minutes. Because when you live in the areas that are so busy like that, or so where people aren't stopping and they're speeding, it makes, it makes it tough, and we have to listen to them. So that's my opinion on that. And Bruce, don't be rolling your eyes. You're ready. I see you rolling your eyes.
Anyway. When this started, I was the one that asked to have the review done by Tech Services, and I appreciate it, having this information. And I guess that's why when we started this morning, seems like it, no, but this evening that I didn't know we were going through this. So, but there's a lot of good information there, and I thank the Tech Services for doing it. And I believe that's what we should do when we're asking for things like this. I did take a run down there during school hours. And yes, it is busy. It was really busy the day that I went. I didn't go every day. Anyway, I was kayaking. But anyway, I'm not like Justin said, I'm not a big fan of putting a stop sign up or a speed bump up every time somebody asks for it. I think there's got to be data behind it. That was the reason I had asked for this, because at that time it just seemed like, is this all we got to do to get a speed bump, or is this all we got to do to get a stop sign? So I'm glad that we had this done. And in saying that, I support the four-way stop here. Just because I've seen it with my own eyes. It is a school zone. There's small kids there. And I don't see a big problem with putting a four-way stop there. But as far as the speed bumps, I think we need to just reduce the speed and start handing some tickets out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Councillor McFeely.
Well, I've been listening and listening and listening. And where do I begin? I find this one a little bit difficult because you really want to support councillors in their ward and with concerns that citizens have. But I've done in the last few days an awful pile of reading about four-way stops. And research about four-way stops, not informal research. I wouldn't call it formal research and consistently the research indicates that placing a four-way stop in an unwarranted, and the key word here is warranted and unwarranted intersection really increase the risk of danger significantly. Doesn't reduce the risk, it increases, and the research supports that. And basically from two perspectives. One, it increases the rear end accidents which push cars into the intersection, and the younger children are the most vulnerable in those situations. And there's also a lack of compliance if motorists feel that the intersection is unwarranted, the four-way, they just don't stop. And I think we have examples that I was at a friend's house in one that was installed recently there, and 8 of the 10 cars didn't stop at the intersection, might slow down a bit, maybe, some of them just booted right through. So knowing the research, knowing the risk, I would just encourage council, before this comes to council, that take some time, do some research, read some of the research. There's papers put out by the Injury Lawyers Association of Ontario talk about the risks associated with four-way stops. Windsor, Ontario put a moratorium on four-way stops once they understood the danger associated with them. Psychology Today, I don't know if people are familiar with that magazine. They had an article a few years ago called Death by Stop Sign. Like four-way stops are a phenomena of North America. The rest of the world, they do exist.
They do roundabouts.
They do roundabouts. They don't have a lot of four-way stops in the rest of the world. So I struggle with, politicizing the thing without really understanding the impact of the decisions we're making. And I know residency four-way stops as the answer, but maybe if they were educated to the risks associated with four-way stops, they wouldn't be quite as quick to sort of jump on that four-way stop bandwagon. And there is some compelling research there that kind of makes you stand. 2 months ago I probably would have supported it, but after reading the research, you kind of stand back and say, man, we're really increasing the risk at those corners. We're not diminishing it by putting four-way stops in. And so I would just really encourage us to take some time, do a little Google search of the dangers of four-way stops or something, and have a look at some of the research, because it's compelling, and just step back a little bit and have a look at it. I like the idea of the speed bumps. I think if you did the speed bumps, and I walk by there pretty well every morning when I'm in town, and there is a lot of volume there. I think four-way stops right at the school or at the approach of the school there would perhaps provide some benefits during school hours. And the concept that Kerry had there of drop-off, I don't know if you can kind of, I use the word legislate that, but if you can legislate it, or if the school can just encourage parents to drop their kids off on the west side of Elm Street, as opposed to dropping them off on the east side of Elm Street, so that people come down Elm Street, drop their kid off, and down they go. So anyways, just some thoughts, and I spent a lot of hours reading about four-way stops, and just scares me a little bit what I was reading in some of that stuff to allow me to support four-way stops. So anyways.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely.
Just a question. I'm
Mayor,
just wondering, I
yes.
didn't see any other light. Sorry, maybe Corey's was
No,
on.
you go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what's the percentage of the drop-offs versus the bus students? What's there, 400 or 500 students?
It's an awful pile of people that drop off. Yeah, especially with COVID.
There'd be a lot of walkers.
Yeah. And there are a lot of walkers right in
There's a lot
Summerside,
of walkers,
right? Yeah, a lot of
and
walkers.
It's very high this year. Like
Yeah.
I'm even not noticing compared to last year. There
Yeah.
are parents that are.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, they're not on the bus.
Yeah, they just.
Soon they will.
prefer to avoid the bus.
Councillor Snow?
Just one last thing. Definitely, I agree with Brian in the fact that last thing we want to do is create more of a hazard. I don't know of any intersections at Notre Dame and Duke, though. In the last 2 years it's been there, and it's working great. And the reason why I bring that up is because of Justin's point. I really pushed for Notre Dame and Duke, and I would support this as well, being for the fact that Notre Dame and Duke was a large pedestrian traffic heading to the boardwalk and to the park. Lots of kids, just the area in general with the Boys and Girls Club Gen X, and traffic back and forth, it made a lot of sense to me as I thought of it. And similar to this, it's a school area, so lots of kids. It sort of fits that theme of, you know, making sure that our areas where there's lots of kids and pedestrians are safe. And that's why I'm saying, I said to Brian's point, we got to make sure that we're doing it. It's safe. But I really don't find, from listening to the people in the area, that there would be any risk with it. Most of our people that are traveling our roads are local people, and it's a stop sign. If we all know what a stop sign looks like, I think we'd stop. So I want to make sure that we take in consideration the fact that it's a school zone and the amount of kids that are walking to and from school there. So.
Madam Chair, just a quick sum
Yes.
up. I didn't see any other lights on there.
No?
But I guess we had the information tonight as requested from staff, and we heard the stats that they read, and but I think to follow up on what Councillor Snow said, on Notre Dame and Duke, I don't think staff recommended it, but council voted on it and it happened. So I don't know what more we can talk about.
No,
here.
I think.
We either do it or we don't do it, or we'll be here next month talking
No,
for
yeah,
another 2 hours. So whatever the majority of council wants, it will happen one way or another. But these four-way stops, you can talk about them for hours, and it's pretty simple. You vote for it or you don't vote for it, and then we'll move on.
That's right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for your input on this, and you know, again, I hope we can sit down and talk about the school zones. And as far as speed bumps, I think Elm Street's probably 3/4 of a kilometer straight down. So I think a couple of speed bumps on there wouldn't hurt to slow people down. That's just my opinion on that. Bruce, don't roll your eyes. And anyway, so if we've finished talking about it, maybe we can move it for a vote.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure, sorry, yes.
To Aaron, somebody had, who was watching, had just messaged me there and just said, what is the difference between a speed hump and a speed bump?
Again, what we're calling it, as far as what you have employed around the city, as far as we're calling the speed bump, they're a shorter dimension, and what we're referencing a speed hump was the ones that were actually a lot longer, probably the length of this desk, and they're actually higher. So it's we have a video there we can show you, so we have a few pictures that we can show you.
Speed humps are higher.
And they're also a lot longer. The car, it's almost like a little ramp. It's
okay, I get you.
It's the full width of the road, but it's almost the length of a car long, and it actually is probably about 3 or 4 inches. But
so what's on Willow now would be a bump.
Correct. Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes. So in theory, you're putting a bump or a hump.
In theory, you're trying to slow down traffic with other means, but in reality, that alone is not doing it. You're not curbing the excessive speeders. We have a video there that if you have a minute, Brian can run it for you, and it'll show you them in place, and cars are still slowing, braking hard. They're going 60, 70 kilometers to their closest. Mr. McDougall and I jamming on the brakes, getting over it, gunning it on. You're trying to target your excessive speeders. You're not trying to slow down you guys that are going the normal speed. You're the ones that are going with your cars and bumping and thumping. The excessive speeders are going over it, braking hard, and then just gunning it again. Yeah. You know, we've also, you mentioned the other comment was your stop signs and putting them in, and you're appeasing the residents in the local area. One of the locations that we put one in the last 2 years, 3 different staff people know people on that street, and I'll say in a social setting. After it was in a year, we asked them, what do you think? All 3 said, it's great, we think it's decreased. We said, you'd be surprised to know that we put the counters down and you have more instances of excessive speeding since the stop went up. They were all surprised. We just asked them, you know, it was 3 different people on the street that each one of us knows on a personal level, and said, what do you think? And they all thought it was great, it's working. We said, would you be surprised to know that the number of instances is higher since it went in? People are just slowing down at that and then just gunning her to get where they're going. So you didn't get your desired result, although there is a feeling of doing something, you're just not maybe getting the desired result that you wanted.
Could I make a suggestion that at the monthly meeting, if you're going to ask for the stop sign, serve notice tonight that it's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, and let council vote on it and get it settled?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're just trying to provide, our role, provide you information, inform a
Exactly.
decision, vote
Yeah.
and decide.
Aaron, was there any thought, or do the city ever use rumble strips? You know how they can groove if you're going through the Cobblegate Pass, you're not long slowing down once you hit that. I know it's a faster.
Again, I would say there wasn't a lot of thought of it as far as at a higher speed. Yes, you're noticing at a higher 80-kilometer speed, you're getting the thump, thump, thump versus, versus we're hopefully just going 40, 50,
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. Anyway, just thought.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bruce. So,
done.
okay, I guess I'd like to move this to council for a vote. Is that on the 7?
Well, we got to settle one way or another.
Yeah, the 19th? Yeah. So, yeah, and
She's just served a notice that she's going to bring it
Greg's
to a
not
monthly
here,
meeting.
so, yeah. So, if that's okay. So, of course, the other ones are intersections as well. Norman and Highland Street, Norman Drive and Highland Avenue, and Central Street and Maple Avenue. So we can just, I'm just going to read what I'm receiving from people. Norman Drive and Highland Avenue intersection. Norman Drive and Highland are in the north area of Summerside where there are a lot of complaints regarding speeding. And I've received, as well as a lot of you, phone calls, emails, and videos. And I've been receiving complaints on a regular basis from this area and wanted to bring them forward. I understand that there has been a study completed, and I was hoping that we could again go over and find out what the outcome was. It's an area of town that needs attention, and I would like to let council and residents know that where we did place stop signs and street signs over the past 2 years, they were very well accepted, and the residents who live in those areas are pleased with the results, most of it being in Summerside North. So people are asking to feel safe in their respective areas of the city, and I'm trying to help them with that request. Our city is growing, our traffic is busier in these areas, and I am sure many years ago when decisions were made, they would have been the right choices at the time. But as I have said, things have changed. We are encouraging residents to live healthy lifestyles by walking, running, biking. We want our children to play outdoors. Most families have 2 cars now, so there's a lot more traffic on the streets. And I feel we as a city need to adapt to these changes and listen to what our residents are bringing forward. So we can go over that. And also, I guess we might as well just add Maple Street and Central Street in there, because I, as a councillor for that ward, as well as Councillor Snow and McColman, we've all been getting the same complaints. So maybe we can just talk about those tonight and then close the door, make a decision at council and close the door on them now that the study is done. So Aaron, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Sure, I guess I'll just highlight a few things you guys have said. The reports are there. Norman and Highland, again, the issue was speeding. Overall, the counts, surprisingly, I guess to us when we actually done them, there's probably 200 cars a day on Highland, and there's half as many on Norman. So already you have half the cars on Norman, which we would have thought might have been reversed. But Highland has the higher density apartments and stuff at the far end and upper end of Jennifer, so that appears to give us the higher numbers.
Okay.
And it's that higher volume of traffic that already has the stop sign. So it's the higher volume in that instance that is being stopped, which is not. So that's it on the, as far as the stop sign. The speeding on Norman, we had again, we put the counters down for 2 days of counts. We had a total of 14 instances where people were going over 60 kilometers an hour, so that's 14 out of the 151 for 9% of the vehicle. Again, that appears to be, we always find 5 to 10% are doing that.
Okay.
I hate to say citywide, but there's a small percentage, as we say, that are doing it. So again, that's where we had 14 of them. Again, the running of the stop signs, staff just reviewed to say, are there any obstructions or trees or anything that maybe there was no visible impediments to stop people from seeing the stop sign, so it's just drivers, I guess, failing to stop.
Failing to stop, yeah.
So again, the recommendations are there. Again, they've done the same criteria the standard criteria for the all warrant review, and it didn't meet the warrants to make it a four-way. And as I mentioned, the majority of them are stopping because the stop sign on this intersection is already on Highland. So, so that's the recap of Norman and Highland. We move over to Central Street.
Quick question
Sorry,
on that
sorry.
intersection. Do we have accident history from there?
We would have to review intersection by intersection through a course of their, it doesn't come to mind as far as what?
No, it certainly doesn't, and very few accidents that I remember in that intersection. It's not one that you keep in your mind, obviously, because they're not reported as much so as other intersections.
Because one of the criteria for consideration of a four-way
Yeah.
stop is accident history.
A combination, yes, with
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that was Norman and Highland. Again, Central Street, the same sort of stuff with it there, only the additional comment that we had gotten was about delays as well as parking. A lot higher volume intersection of Central and Maple. You have a lot more volumes. Again, Central Street 2800 versus Maple Avenue with 700. Ironically, one leg of the intersection has 1300, so Maple Avenue
I'm
is...
sorry, what did you just say?
Central Street has 2,800 vehicles per day.
Yeah,
Maple Avenue, on both sides of Central, have drastic difference in numbers.
yes,
The
okay.
section that's between Granville has 1,300, whereas the other section has 700, because people are using Maple Avenue as a cut-through, because we don't have a lot of we have a lot of north-south streets and very few east-west, so Granville, Victoria, people come up, cut across Maple, and go up Central. So that leg of the intersection has a lot more, but still not, they still don't have half the volume as they have on Central Street, even with that big difference. So that didn't work out for when they ran through the warrants for the all-way stop as well. We had received last summer a call on this intersection, so we were dealing with a resident. So we sent staff up there last year to sit during the peak times as far as bus times when the complaint came in.
Yeah.
And they actually done the actual level of delay that they were experiencing on Maple Avenue was another complaint. And again, the average delay was 8.5 seconds.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then when we done the overall, I think I'll just give me a second, I think too many notes. But the bulk of them were like, say less than 15 seconds was occupying like 85 to 95% of the delay. So there was delay, but the bulk of it was in 10 to 15 seconds of delay. So again, the speeding on Central Street appeared to be one in the upper section that, yes, we did have a higher percentage of the ones going more than 20 over. We had 24% that were going. So we had a higher percentage in that location, even though we have our permanent radar sign at the top of the hill coming in. Again, speeds and comfort level kind of coexist. When you're coming south on Central Street, you have the graveyard on one side and the park on the other. You have no driveways to process. You're not worried about a car coming or going. So speeds have a tendency to increase because drivers have less to process and worry about. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the where we are and why there tends to be a higher increase in speeds. I'm not saying it's right, but that just tends to be a direct link. Again, I just mentioned stop signs in this location. To put one on Central Street where you're going to stop 3,000 vehicles a day versus 700 coming out off of Maple or 1,300. So it's a big decrease in the efficiency of the intersection if you're going to put a stop sign on Central Street. Again, the parking, another comment was on parking on Maple Street. So they measured both sides of Maple. Maple is, the width of the asphalt there is 8.5 meters, which is what all our local streets are. They allow for 2 lanes of traffic and parking on one side, or if there is parking on both sides, it's 1 lane alternating. So people would have to wait to go by them. That is typical of our standard local streets that we're building new. So we verified the width of those. So again, the recap was the all-way stop was not warranted through the conditions. There was a higher percentage of speeding on Central Street, and again, even though we have a radar, one of our things we try to do is put up a temporary radar sign. Well, there's a permanent one as you're coming into there, but And again, if there was parking issues on Maple, we'd have to consider future looking at decreasing parking on one side through the bylaw.
Okay.
So again, you guys have that information again with you in both of those intersections, and you can review them and make your decision at council. I'm here for any questions you want to ask as well.
I certainly appreciate the report because I think there's a lot of good detail in it. I guess I'm looking for Maple and Central. I think those points are really important. My only questions on it would be certainly the amount of cars that you say, and especially from one end of Maple to say the other end of Maple where it's traffic coming from Granville to Maple, the difference in the number of vehicles. But I think the two main points that I hear from residents on Maple that live on the lower part of Maple from Granville is that Leger Park creates a problem with parking. And I know that we only have, I believe, the parking on one side, but sometimes people do park and they don't really pay attention. They park on that other side closest to the park where the water park area is. So that creates congestion for people to park. The other thing that I'm hearing from residents, a number of them, is when cars are coming around the corner, if anybody is backing out or trying to get out onto Maple, they don't have enough time. Like they could be almost ready to make their turn onto Maple, but somebody's coming around the corner, either from Central or coming up Granville at a higher speed, and it doesn't give them time to get a clear way onto Maple. So that is the two complaints that I'm hearing, why there needs to be the stop sign or something with better parking signage. So I know that doesn't really...
Two complaints, Willow, you said?
Several.
Oh, several. I said two.
1, 2, 4. And they're all different ages.
And there's a stop sign on Maple now.
Yeah.
But I think where we're running into the problem, and I know it's been a long night for people, it's where Leger Park is, in particular, summertime, when the kids are there. People are dropping off, and it makes it really hard for people trying to get by. And I know you indicated that there's parking on one side of Maple, but sometimes people are parking on both sides of Maple because they think they're just going to stop very quickly. Well, a lot of times they stay there longer near the water park. And so it creates the congestion in that area, and then when people are trying to back out onto Maple from their driveways, it's creating the congestion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Brian.
Just a quick observation. I guess I drive by there 4 or 5 times a day and walk by there quite often. I think part of the problem area there is that entrance coming out of the park right by the intersection. Yeah. With cars coming out of there, like I'm wondering if that entrance in wasn't moved up further up Central, so it wouldn't congest the corner quite as much.
It's entrance only, yeah.
Yeah, but it still slows the traffic down coming, you know what I mean? And people don't adhere to that necessarily either as entrance only, so.
The entrance, councillor, is up a little further up by the old folks' homes up there, and
that's the
Parkview. So the one at the intersection is no entry.
Yeah, but there's often people coming and going there.
Well, I mean, the city has the option of blocking that off.
Yeah, so, anyway, just wondering, and if some of the points Norma raised about, you know, stopping on one side of Maple. Yeah.
Okay.
So, anyways.
Could be the opposite, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's the opposite now. That is the opposite, yeah.
Long night.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like Director Aaron mentioned, it used to be both ways.
Okay. Thank you, Chief and Brian and Councillor Snow.
And somebody mentioned it with other intersections, but is there an accident count for this intersection? And the reason why I'm asking is that's a complaint that I received several times while on Campaign Trail a few years ago now, that intersection was some significant accidents over the years, and the actual residents I was talking to that live in close proximity had to, you know, they hear it and respond to it, and they were really concerned with that intersection. And then another complaint I receive a lot of is just getting out of that Maple on to Central. And I know you mentioned peak times, that the average was 8 seconds, but it's something, I guess, during the busy times, maybe it's more than 8 seconds, if whatever, but I'm concerned that when we do the change to upper Central, where we have a roundabout and the flow of traffic is more steady, is that going to make it even more difficult for people to get off Maple onto Central? So I'm sort of looking into the future as well with possible changes to that intersection. What's that do for traffic flow coming down Central, and how much harder is it going to be for people getting off Maple when they're already complaining about getting off Maple? So,
Exactly.
I just think it's worth and not to confuse things, but that's another question that regarding the other intersection is getting off Duke. Then when we get traffic just to flow in that intersection, how it affect the other intersections for people getting off? So Maple Avenue and Central is definitely one that I receive a lot of complaints from the people living on Maple regarding getting off on Central.
Regarding that intersection, also regarding the parking on both sides, that they're, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Snow. Chief?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Snow, we can get those accident figures before our next meeting. We can only go back a couple of years because the data purges itself every couple of years, but we can get you those figures for the last couple of years, the accidents.
That's great. So, Councillor Duran?
Yeah, just it sometimes kind of seems that, like, we live in a city, so the nature of living in a city is, you know, when you're driving, you're going to have to stop and wait. It's just, it comes with living in a city, and it kind of seems like more and more people kind of expect for us to give them the ability to have express ways everywhere without having to wait. But the nature is there's going to be delays. There's traffic all the time. It's not getting lighter. People have to wait.
Yeah.
Period. Like, there's no way for us to alleviate traffic at every intersection, so there's no wait. It just can't be done. So I think it's important to keep that in mind and communicate that. Like, we all want to get to where we're going as fast and as efficiently as possible, but, you know, people pick their routes, and depending on what route they pick, there's going to be stop signs, there's going to be traffic lights. Sometimes you just got to wait.
True story.
When we're talking about the delays there, I'm just quickly looking at the math there. There was 200 vehicles in the morning peak. Only 17 of them were just waiting longer than 15 seconds. 17 out of the 200. And in the afternoon peak for the buses, when they were busy from the schools and everything, there was 250 vehicles there in that time period, and only 25 of those were longer than 15 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
No, as far as the delay that we're, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. So, what are you thinking, folks? Do we move this forward to the council meeting, or do we take the recommendation of tech services? How are people feeling about this?
Which one are you talking about here, Maple and Central?
Well, there's two. There's Norman Drive, and there's Central and Maple. There's Norman and Highland. So
whatever is the best way to get it settled, one way or another.
Exactly.
If we don't vote on it, we'll be talking about it again.
Yeah, it's been going on. So why don't we move it forward then to council meeting on the 19th, both of them, if that's Brian, if that's okay. And so then we'll, yeah. So that concludes this meeting, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, do we have anything on community services?
No.
Okay, I guess that's all our committee meetings
Your Worship,
then?
I just wanted to say one thing. I think that we should do a little shout out to somebody that has some people that have gone a little bit unrecognized during the COVID and everything, and it's the kids in this that have gone back to school, and the changes, they've been one of the more unrecognized casualties, and they are really true heroes when you see how they have just not skipped a beat. Their everything has changed. Their school day, their extracurricular, everything has changed. They're in their little masks. They're doing their sanitizing. Their teachers. I think we really have to take a little look at how they react to everything and give a big shout out to them, because they haven't missed a beat in this whole thing, and they just get up and go every day and keep going. So I think we have a big shout out to them.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So we've gotten to the end, I believe, of all the committee meetings, and I believe we have a committee of the whole, a couple items for the committee of the whole. So is there a motion to adjourn, and then we'll take a 5-minute move by Councillor Snow and second by Councillor Ramsey. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn and then take a 10-minute stretch.